After hearing the resounding words of Yoga Maya, Kamsa was overcome with a profound sense of despair. The revelation that his actions had been futile, that the child he feared was already beyond his reach, left him shaken to his core. For a long moment, he stood frozen, lost in thought, grappling with the enormity of his sins. Slowly, his demeanor changed, and the arrogance and cruelty that had defined him seemed to melt away, replaced by sorrow and remorse. Breaking the heavy silence, Kamsa turned to Vasudeva and Devaki, his voice low and burdened with regret. With an air of solemnity, he commanded his guards to release them from their chains, an order that stunned all who heard it. Then, speaking in a tone heavy with repentance, Kamsa admitted the heinousness of his deeds. He confessed that, blinded by fear and madness, he had committed the unthinkable, killing the children of his own sister and brother-in-law, acts of cruelty so extreme that they defied comprehension. Kamsa's voice wavered as he continued, expressing sorrow for the pain he had caused. He acknowledged that his actions had been ruthless and unnatural, atrocities that no one should ever inflict upon their own family. Yet, with a trembling heart, he pleaded with Vasudeva and Devaki not to let their grief consume them, for the children he had slain could not be brought back. In an attempt to console them, he assured them that their innocent souls had surely ascended to heaven, untouched by the suffering of the mortal world. Reflecting on the nature of karma, Kamsa said that all living beings were bound by their deeds, and perhaps some inscrutable destiny had driven his monstrous acts. His words, though marked by sorrow, carried a strange sincerity, as if he sought solace for himself as much as for them. With a softened heart, he turned to Devaki, blessing her with good fortune for the years to come. Then, addressing Vasudeva, Kamsa humbly admitted to the cruelty he had inflicted upon them, and, in a rare moment of humility, begged for their forgiveness. Vasudeva and Devaki, though stunned by the sudden transformation in Kamsa, saw in him a man burdened by his own conscience. For the first time, they saw not the tyrant who had imprisoned them and killed their children, but a man filled with deep remorse, desperately seeking redemption. In that moment, their hearts, weary from years of suffering, softened. Feeling an unexpected sense of relief, they forgave Kamsa, their smiles carrying the weight of pain, loss, and reconciliation. For the first time in years, Vasudeva and Devaki stepped out of the dark confines of their prison cell. The sunlight, though faint, warmed their faces as they walked freely, their chains now broken. Behind them, Kamsa stood, a shadow of his former self, consumed by the weight of his sins and the knowledge that he could never undo the harm he had caused. Yet, for that brief moment, the air was heavy not with hatred, but with the possibility of forgiveness and the bittersweet release of regret. The next day, Kamsa, still burdened by the prophecy and Yoga Maya's words, convened a meeting with his ministers in the royal court. His mind, however, harbored a secret command that was far from ordinary. Using his mystical connections, he silently summoned his Asura devotees, Putana, Trinavarta, Agosura, and others, to assemble in the palace. Within moments, the air in the court grew heavy, and these fearsome asuras materialized, their towering forms and menacing appearances causing gasps of terror among the ministers and palace attendants. The ministers, unaccustomed to witnessing asuras in the flesh, were visibly shaken, their eyes wide with dread. The members of the court huddled together, overwhelmed by fear. Seeing the unease in the room, Kamsa raised his hand to calm them, assuring them that the asuras were under his command and would not harm anyone without his orders. Though his words offered some relief, a lingering sense of dread remained in the hearts of all present. Breaking the uneasy silence, Kamsa addressed the council, revealing what Yoga Maya had told him, that the eighth son of Devaki, the one destined to end his life, was alive and hidden somewhere beyond his reach. The ministers, still grappling with the shock of seeing asuras among them, hesitated to voice their opinions. Before they could speak, the asuras stepped forward, their voices echoing with dark intent. The asuras declared their plan with terrifying conviction. They vowed to scour the kingdom and beyond, sparing no effort to find and kill every child of the age that matched Devaki's eighth son. Their strategy, however, extended beyond the search for one child. They proposed a brutal campaign to destroy Vishnu's power on earth completely. They spoke of killing rishis, sages, brahmins, and yogis, anyone performing yagnas and spreading righteousness. By doing so, they claimed, they would sever Vishnu's spiritual connection to the land, likening it to cutting off his very limbs. The Asura's plan did not stop there. To ensure Vishnu's complete eradication, they suggested the destruction of all cows, revered as sacred to Vishnu. Furthermore, they vowed to kill every Vaishnava and anyone who worshipped Vishnu, asserting that if they eradicated his devotees, Vishnu's presence and influence would fade from the world entirely. Their goal was not just to eliminate Vishnu's physical manifestations, but to erase his existence from the hearts and minds of humanity. Kamsa, still consumed by fear for his life, listened to the Asura's grim proposal. His mind, clouded by desperation and confusion, failed to find any alternative course of action. Though he was disturbed by the extremity of their plan, his overwhelming fear of the prophecy compelled him to agree. He granted the Asuras permission to execute their schemes, sending them in all directions to carry out their horrific mission. With Kamsa's command, the Asuras spread out across the kingdom, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. They began targeting children, sages, and Vaishnavas, spreading terror and chaos wherever they went. The once thriving lands of Kamsa's rule fell under a shadow of darkness as fear and suffering gripped the people. The Asura's relentless hunt had begun, and Kamsa, though the orchestrator of this brutal campaign, remained a prisoner of his own dread. Nanda, with his naturally sensitive and kind-hearted nature, felt an indescribable joy knowing that the supreme god Vishnu himself had taken birth as his son. Overwhelmed with gratitude and devotion, he performed a sacred bath and conducted the traditional horoscopic rituals for the child. As the leader of the cattle-rearing community, Nanda upheld his dharma by generously donating cows, grains, and food to the community, spreading joy and prosperity among his people. At Nanda's house in Vajrapura, the celebrations were lively and joyful. The house was decorated with garlands of fragrant flowers and colorful banners, while the cows were adorned with peacock feathers and flower garlands. Gopikas from all over the kingdom gathered to see Nanda's divine son, laughing and playing as they threw a sacred mixture of milk, water, curd, and ghee on each other in celebration. Among the joyous crowd, Rohini, holding her son Sankarshana, joined Yashoda in performing pujas and welcoming guests. The two mothers, radiant with happiness, stood together, celebrating the divine occasion. A few days later, Nanda collected taxes from the Gopalas and traveled to Mathura to pay them to Kamsa. When Vasudeva learned of Nanda's arrival, he rushed to meet his old friend. Their reunion was heartfelt, with Vasudeva embracing Nanda warmly asked about the children, eager to hear news of their well-being. Nanda, with a proud smile, told Vasudeva about the two boys. He shared that Rohini's son was named Sankarshana, and Devaki's son, now under the loving care of Yashoda, was named Krishna. He assured Vasudeva that both boys were thriving, nurtured with the utmost affection and care by Rohini and Yashoda. Hearing this, Vasudeva felt a wave of relief and joy, knowing that the divine child, destined to restore Dharma, was safe. Though Vasudeva and Devaki were now free from imprisonment and had the opportunity to visit Krishna and Sankarshana, a lingering fear held them back. They knew that if Kamsa discovered Krishna's true identity or learned that their son was with Nanda, his wrath would be relentless. The fear of Kamsa's cruelty and the possibility of endangering their son weighed heavily on their hearts. Before leaving Mathura, Vasudeva warned Nanda of the danger that still loomed. He informed him that Kamsa, though softened momentarily by Yoga Maya's words, had not relented in his efforts to kill Krishna. Vasudeva urged Nanda to exercise utmost caution and remain vigilant. After paying the taxes to Kamsa, Nanda began his return journey to Gokula, his mind heavy with the warning, but his heart steady in his resolve to protect Krishna. One of Kamsa's asuras, Puthana, had already made her way to Gokula. The demoness, known for her cunning and cruelty, had been sent with the task of killing infants of Krishna's age. Using her mystical powers, Puthana transformed herself into a stunningly beautiful woman. Her radiance was so captivating that men in the village were entranced by her beauty, while the women, seeing her elegance and grace, whispered among themselves that perhaps Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu, had come to visit her husband's earthly form. Puthana wandered through Gokula, her eyes scanning for the child she sought. Her steps led her to Nanda's house, where the faint sound of a baby's laughter reached her ears. Without hesitation, she entered the home, her demeanor calm and inviting. There, she saw Krishna, lying peacefully with a serene smile on his face. The moment her eyes met the child's, a shiver ran through her. Despite her evil intentions, she felt an inexplicable awe. She realized at once that this child was no ordinary infant. He was the one destined to end the reign of the Asuras. This was the child they had all been searching for. Driven by her mission, Puthana moved toward Krishna and picked him up. Yashoda and Rohini, entering the room just as she held the child, saw nothing amiss. Puthana's beauty, grace, and calm demeanor disarmed them, and they assumed she was a visitor drawn by Krishna's charm. Mistaking her affection for genuine love, they continued with their work, leaving Puthana alone with the baby. Seizing the opportunity, Puthana prepared to execute her plan. With a cunning smile, brought her breast to his mouth. Instead of milk, she fed him poison, believing this would surely kill the child. But as Krishna latched onto her breast, he began to suck, not just the poison she intended to feed him, but the very life force from her body. Puthana immediately realized something was wrong. A searing pain coursed through her body, intensifying with every moment. She tried to pull away, but Krishna's tiny hands held her with an unrelenting grip. Her cries of agony echoed through the house as sweat poured from her body. Her eyes widened in terror, and she began to thrash wildly, begging for release. Her screams grew louder and more desperate, drawing the attention of the villagers, who rushed toward Nanda's house. Along with Yashoda and Rohini, Nanda, who had just returned from Mathura, arrived as Puthana's agonizing cries reached their peak. What they saw left them frozen in shock. Before their eyes, the once beautiful woman transformed into her true Asura form. Towering, grotesque figure with sharp claws, monstrous fangs, and terrifying features. Her lifeless body collapsed with a thunderous sound, sprawling across the room. Amidst the chaos, Krishna sat unscathed on her massive chest, playing innocently, as if nothing had happened. The Gopikas, trembling with fear, rushed to lift Krishna away from the monstrous corpse. Nanda, Yashoda, and Rohini stood speechless, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and relief. The danger that had loomed over their home was now gone, and while they were horrified by the encounter, they could not help but feel a surge of joy and gratitude. Their Krishna, the divine child, had vanquished a great threat, and once again, they were reminded of the extraordinary power and destiny that surrounded him. The people of Gokula gathered around, their awe growing as they realized the magnitude of what had occurred. A new belief began to take root in their hearts. They began to see Krishna not merely as a child, but as a divine protector. They believed that even in his infancy, he was already a protector of Dharma, a beacon of divine strength destined to rid the world of darkness and restore righteousness. In the royal city of Kalandapura, a sense of anticipation hung heavy in the air as Devasrava, the second son of Surasena and younger brother of Vasudeva, awaited the birth of his first child. His wife, Kamsavati, was in the throes of labor, and after hours of tense waiting, the midwife emerged with joyous news. A son had been born. Devasrava, overwhelmed with happiness, rejoiced at the birth of an heir who would continue his legacy. Kamsavati, too, felt immense joy at the arrival of their son, whose presence filled their hearts with hope and pride. The king ordered grand celebrations throughout the kingdom. The streets of Kalandapura were adorned with banners, and the people were treated to lavish feasts. In his generosity, Devasrava donated cows, wealth, and other gifts to his subjects, ensuring that the joy of his son's birth was shared by all. The newborn was named Shatrughna, a name signifying the destroyer of enemies. As tradition demanded, Devasrava performed the horoscopic rituals for his son, seeking blessings from the gods for the child's future. As days passed, the kingdom's astrologers, studying Shatrughna's horoscope, discovered something ominous. The planetary alignments and the geographical position of Kalandapura at the time of his birth foretold a dire future. If the boy remained in the kingdom, it would bring immense calamity, leading to the eventual destruction of Kalandapura. The astrologers, though confident in their findings, hesitated to deliver such devastating news to the king directly. Instead, they consulted the king's closest ministers, who conveyed the troubling revelation to Devasrava. Upon hearing this, the king was struck with anguish. The joy of his son's birth had turned into a profound sorrow. In desperation, he convened an immediate council of astrologers, ministers, and royal gurus to deliberate on the matter. The gurus, after thoroughly examining Shatrughna's horoscope, confirmed the astrologers' predictions. They agreed that the boy's presence in Kalandapura would spell doom for the kingdom. Devasrava found himself at a heartbreaking crossroads. On one side was his love for his firstborn son, and on the other, the safety and prosperity of his kingdom. Some ministers attempted to ease his torment, reminding him of Dhritarashtra, the king of Hastinapura, who had faced a similar dilemma with his firstborn son, but chose to keep him despite the warnings. But Devasrava, unwilling to jeopardize the entire kingdom for his personal love, decided that the only choice was to abandon Shatrughna. In deep pain, Devasrava personally informed Kamsavati of his decision. The queen, shattered by the news, wept inconsolably, pleading with her husband to reconsider. She begged him, saying if Shatrughna must be abandoned, then she too should be cast out with her son. But Devasrava, though equally heartbroken, stood firm, reasoning that the kingdom's welfare had to take precedence. Through tears, he convinced Kamsavati that their sacrifice was for the greater good, though it tore him apart to do so. With a heavy heart, Devasrava entrusted his infant son, Shatrughna, to his soldiers. He provided them with 3 horse carts laden with food and supplies, issuing specific instructions for their journey. The soldiers were to travel into the north forests, venturing as far as the provisions allowed. Once half of the supplies had been consumed, they were to leave the child there in the wilderness and return to Kalandapura without looking back. Bound by their duty, the soldiers obeyed the king's sorrowful command. They set out on their journey, traveling for 3 Pushkara days, a total of 36 days, into the dense and desolate forest. Upon reaching a remote and isolated location, where the supplies were nearly half depleted, they gently placed the infant Shatrughna on the forest floor. Offering silent prayers for the child's survival, they began their sorrowful journey back to the city, haunted by the cries of the abandoned prince. Deep within the dense, untamed forest, a hungry sloth bear roamed restlessly. For days, it had been unable to find its usual fare of honeycombs, termites, and ants. The scarcity of food had left it ravenous, its instincts sharpened and its patience frayed. Desperate for sustenance, the bear scoured the forest floor, its keen sense of smell and sharp ears guiding its futile search. Amidst the rustling leaves and distant calls of birds, an unfamiliar sound caught the bear's attention. A faint but distinct cry of a baby. It was a strange and unnatural sound in the wild, piquing the bear's curiosity and stirring its primal instincts. Driven by hunger and territorial dominance, the bear lumbered toward the sound, its massive paws crushing the undergrowth with each step. As the bear emerged from the shadows, its dark eyes fixed upon the abandoned Shatrughna lying on the forest floor. The soft wails of the child were unlike anything the bear had encountered before, but hunger soon overpowered hesitation. and the bear's natural instinct to attack anything new or unfamiliar surged to the forefront. The sloth bear, with its sharp claws and immense strength, charged toward the baby with a guttural growl. Its powerful forelimbs, capable of tearing bark from trees, were now poised to strike. Just as the bear reared back for its attack, a sudden volley of arrows sliced through the air. From the cover of the forest, the arrows struck the bear's massive body in rapid succession. With a pained roar, the bear faltered, its momentum breaking as it stumbled forward. The beast collapsed to the ground with a thud. The forest fell silent, save for the faint rustling of leaves. Out of the shadows, a group of Nishada hunters, led by their king, Hiranyadanu, emerged. Bows in hand, their sharp eyes scanned the area, ensuring the threat had been neutralized. Hiranyadanu, a seasoned hunter, approached the lifeless bear cautiously before turning his attention to the source of the sound that had drawn them there, the infant. There, lying the abandoned Shatrughna, his cries now quieter as if sensing the safety brought by the hunters. Hiranyadanu knelt beside the child, his rugged features softening as he examined the boy. The infant's noble appearance and the remnants of royal provisions nearby spoke volumes. The Nishada king knew this was no ordinary child. To Hiranyadanu there was no doubt. The gods themselves had led him to this boy, marking this moment as a turning point in their tribe's destiny. Understanding the gravity of what had just transpired, he resolved to take the child with them to their village. With the hunters carrying the slain bear and Hiranyadanu carrying Shatrughna, the group made their way back to the residence of the Nishada tribe, nestled deep within the forest. Their arrival sparked curiosity and murmurs among the tribe, as the sight of the infant wrapped in fine silks and the imposing carcass of the bear told an unusual story. Hiranyadanu, with the boy held securely in his arms, stepped forward to address his people. Standing tall amidst the gathered tribe, Hiranyadanu addressed his people with the resolve of a leader who had witnessed the hand of fate. He declared that the boy had not come to them by chance, but through the divine will of the gods. It was evident to him that the child had been placed in their care for a purpose. From that moment, he proclaimed that the boy would be one of them, a son of the Nishada people. He would grow under their protection and guidance, raised with love, strength, and dedication as Hiranyadanu's own child. The people listened intently, their eyes reflecting both awe and joy, as Hiranyadanu named the boy Ekalavya, a name imbued with meaning and purpose. It signifies one who is focused or the singularly dedicated one. The tribe, known for their simplicity and innocence, untouched by the cunning and jealousy of the material world, welcomed the boy with open hearts. To them, the arrival of Ekalavya was a blessing, a sign that their leader had been granted an heir who would carry forth the legacy of their people. Their joy was evident in their cheers and celebrations as they gathered to see the child who now belonged to them. In Hastinapura, the prophecy of Vidhyabyasa unfolded exactly as foretold. Through his divine intervention, 100 sons and 1 daughter were born from the pots he had created. The miracle brought unparalleled joy to Dhritarashtra, who now considered himself the happiest man in the world. To him, the years of difficulties and insults he had endured seemed to be compensated by this extraordinary blessing. Surrounded by his children, Dhritarashtra felt an immense pride in his legacy, convinced that his dynasty was now more secure than ever. The task of naming the royal offspring was undertaken by Kripacharya and the royal gurus. Each of the 100 sons was given a name reflecting aspirations for their future, and the only daughter was named Dushala, embodying grace and elegance. The court celebrated this unprecedented event, and the entire kingdom rejoiced, for the Kuru dynasty had no shortage of heirs. Bhishma, the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. With 100 sons born to Dhritarashtra and 5 sons to Pandu, the future of the kingdom seemed secured. In Shatashringa, far from the political intrigues of Hastinapura, Pandu enjoyed the simple joys of family life. He found immense happiness spending time with his 5 sons and his wives. Kunti, with her 3 sons, and Madri, with her twins, shared in the contentment, living in harmony and peace. For them, the weight of their past burdens had been lifted, and they had nothing to worry about. Amid this atmosphere of celebration, there were, however, pockets of quiet unrest. Sugadha, the mother of Yuyutsu, while happy for her son, often felt troubled. Her son, born not to a husband but to Dhritarashtra, symbolized an unusual circumstance. She worried about her son's future and his place within the intricate dynamics of the royal family. Though she hid her concerns, they lingered in her heart. Elsewhere in the palace, Vidura and Sulabha found joy in their growing family. They had been blessed with 2 sons, Anusava and Anukithu, and a daughter, Ambavati. Vidura, ever wise and loyal, balanced his duties toward the kingdom and his love for his family with remarkable poise. Their household became a quiet haven amidst the complexities of royal life. Yet, beneath the surface, shadows of manipulation were continuing to take more control. Shakuni, Dhritarashtra's cunning brother-in-law, outwardly expressed happiness for the king's newfound joy, but behind his facade lay an agenda. At every opportunity, he subtly reminded Dhritarashtra that his eldest son, Duryodhana, should rightfully ascend the throne, not Yudhishthira, the son of Pandu. Shakuni's words, laced with cunning and ambition, began to influence Dhritarashtra, planting seeds of bias and insecurity. Bhishma, with his keen perception, observed the subtle changes in Dhritarashtra's demeanor. He recognized the manipulation at play and understood that Shakuni was the architect of these shifting dynamics. Though outwardly calm, Bhishma's heart grew heavy, and he prepared himself to safeguard the balance of the Kuru dynasty, knowing that the unity of the kingdom would soon be tested by forces far more complex than celebration and joy. On a tranquil afternoon in Gokula, Yashoda, the ever-loving mother of Krishna, was joyfully playing with her son, cherishing the innocent moments that brought her immense happiness. As she held Krishna in her arms, an unusual sensation overcame her. She noticed that Krishna was growing heavier, almost imperceptibly at first, but within moments, his weight became unbearable. Yashoda, struggling under the sudden and unnatural heaviness, was forced to set him down. Bewildered and alarmed, she tried again to lift him, but her strength failed against what felt like the weight of a mountain. A wave of fear swept over her heart. Convinced that some evil force had taken hold of her child, Yashoda began fervently praying to Vishnu, beseeching him to protect her son. Her voice trembled as she recited sacred hymns, her motherly instincts battling the dread in her heart. She resolved to summon the Brahmins to analyze the situation and offer their guidance. But as she set out to seek them, the serene village atmosphere shifted ominously. A sudden storm began to brew, with winds growing fierce and uncontrollable. The air filled with flying debris, mud, and sand, obscuring vision and sending the people of Gokula scurrying into their homes for safety. This was no ordinary storm. It was the arrival of Trinavartha, a demon sent by Kamsa, who had learned of the death of Puthana in Gokula and sought vengeance. Taking the form of a mighty tornado, Trinavartha descended upon the village, his dark whirlwind engulfing the land and striking terror into the hearts of all. Amidst the chaos, Trinavartha found Krishna, who still sat where Yashoda had placed him. Despite Krishna's unnatural weight, the demon easily lifted the child and soared into the skies, carrying him within the vortex of his storm. As the winds howled and debris flew, the villagers felt as though the end of their world was upon them. Yashoda, blinded by the storm, frantically searched for Krishna in the place she had left him, her cries of despair barely audible over the deafening gale. Fear gripped her as she realized Krishna was gone, and she wept uncontrollably, her heart heavy with the terror of losing her son. High above the clouds, Trinavartha carried Krishna with great speed, believing he had succeeded in his mission. However, the weight of Krishna began to increase rapidly. What had been effortless now felt like an unbearable burden. Trinavartha, despite his immense strength, began to struggle under the growing heaviness. Higher and higher he tried to ascend, but Krishna's weight kept increasing until it became insurmountable. Desperate, the demon attempted to release the child, but Krishna clung to him with an iron grip. Suddenly, Krishna's tiny hands reached for Trinavartha's neck, gripping it with unimaginable strength. The demon writhed and flailed, attempting to free himself, but Krishna's hold tightened, his divine power overwhelming the asura. Trinavartha's limbs grew weak, his eyes bulged in agony, and his roars of rage turned to cries of desperation. Helpless, the demon began to plummet from the sky, his lifeless body dragging Krishna with him. The villagers, now emerging from their homes after the storm had subsided, heard a thunderous crash as the demon's body struck the ground. Yashoda, still searching for Krishna, rushed toward the sound, followed by Nanda and the other Gopikas. What they saw left them speechless. Krishna, unscathed and smiling innocently, sat atop the lifeless form of the monstrous Trinavartha. The asura's body was battered and bleeding, his grotesque features frozen in death. The sight was both terrifying and astonishing. The villagers were struck with disbelief as they beheld the lifeless, bleeding form of the giant and deadly asura. While little Krishna was unharmed and smiling serenely, it seemed beyond comprehension that such a monstrous force had been vanquished. Yet Krishna, their playful child, remained untouched by harm. Nanda, though overjoyed to see Krishna safe, felt a deep unease growing in his heart. He realized that this event was a harbinger of future challenges and that their beloved child's extraordinary destiny would inevitably attract greater dangers. The people of Gokula were filled with wonder. This event strengthened what many already believed. that Krishna was no ordinary child, but a divine being destined to protect them and uphold Dharma in the face of darkness. As Krishna and Sankarsana grew, they were showered with immense love and affection by Nanda, Yashoda, and Rohini. Though Rohini was aware that her husband Vasudeva was now free in Mathura, she chose to stay in Gokula, prioritizing the safety of her son Sankarsana, knowing that Kamsa's malevolence still loomed. One day, while Yashoda was busy sprinkling fresh butter, she momentarily stepped aside to tend to boiling milk on the stove. Taking advantage of the moment, Krishna mischievously devoured the butter she had sprinkled and shared the remaining butter with the monkeys, much to their delight. When Yashoda returned and saw the emptied butter pot, she immediately understood what had happened. Determined to teach Krishna a lesson, she set out to catch him. But Krishna, in his playful nature, ran away, evading her grasp effortlessly. Yashoda, drenched in sweat and struggling to keep up, finally caught him when Krishna, seeing her exhaustion, let himself be captured. Holding him firmly, Yashoda, in mock anger, decided to punish him by tying him to a grindstone with a rope. After securing him, she returned to her chores. Krishna, ever mischievous, wasn't deterred by this punishment. He dragged the heavy grindstone behind him, his small frame belying his divine strength. Wandering toward two large trees standing close together, the grindstone became wedged between them. Krishna, with his childlike innocence and supreme power, pulled at the rope with determination. To the astonishment of anyone who would have seen, the two massive trees cracked and fell with a thunderous crash. These fallen trees were no ordinary ones. They bore a tale steeped in ancient lore from ages long past. Ages ago, the illustrious sons of Kubera, the god of wealth, Nalakubera and Managriva, were revered for their devotion to Lord Shiva. Yet, their immense privilege and opulence gradually turned them arrogant. Enveloped in the comfort of their limitless wealth, they became careless, their humility fading as pride consumed their hearts. One fateful day, the two brothers, intoxicated by their lavish lives, indulged themselves in a forest pond, surrounded by women, reveling in their wealth and power. Stripped of all modesty, they disrobed completely, basking in their arrogance as they enjoyed the water, oblivious to decorum or propriety. It was during this moment of unbridled arrogance that the venerable sage Narada Muni, known for his wisdom and ability to guide souls toward righteousness, passed by the pond. The brothers, even upon seeing the great sage, made no effort to cover themselves. They remained unashamed and unmoved, their pride eclipsing any sense of respect or humility. Narada Muni, observing their disrespectful behavior, discerned that their actions stemmed not from ignorance, but from the corrosive influence of unchecked pride. Their entire lives had been a tapestry of indulgence, handed everything without effort or struggle. As a result, they lacked the capacity to understand their misconduct or the dignity expected of them. To teach them a lasting lesson and free them from the chains of their arrogance, Narada pronounced a curse upon them. He declared that they would be transformed into trees, retaining life but devoid of mobility, a state that would strip them of their pride and force them to reflect on their behavior. Before the brothers could comprehend the gravity of the situation or plead for mercy, the curse took effect. Their bodies stiffened and elongated, roots sprouting as their legs became trunks, and branches spread where their arms once were. In moments, Nalakubera and Managriva stood transformed into motionless trees, mute witnesses to the world around them. Their punishment, though harsh, was meant to guide them toward humility and self-awareness. In their rooted silence, the sons of Kubera began their journey of atonement, standing as silent reminders of how arrogance and pride, when left unchecked, can lead even the most privileged souls into spiritual darkness. As these trees were now destroyed by Krishna, Nalakubera and Managriva emerged from them, shining with divine radiance as they gazed upon Krishna, their hearts filled with gratitude and realization. They bowed before him, their eyes glistening with tears, for they knew that this child was none other than the Supreme Lord Vishnu incarnate. They understood that their long curse, which had lasted 100 godly years, had finally come to an end. Both brothers expressed their gratitude to Narada, whose curse had ultimately led them to this moment of redemption. They thanked Krishna for liberating them, declaring that witnessing him in this divine form had not only freed them from the curse, but also from their pride and ignorance. With joined hands and hearts full of devotion, they returned to their celestial abode. The loud crash of the falling trees echoed through Gokula, alarming the villagers. Nanda, fearing another attack by a demon, rushed to the spot, his heart pounding with worry for Krishna. He found Krishna near the fallen trees, unharmed and smiling. Nanda, bewildered by the sight, assumed it was the doing of some asura. Some of Krishna's young friends, who had witnessed everything, ran to their parents and narrated how Krishna had pulled the trees down with his strength. While many villagers dismissed these tales as childish imagination, others, who had already seen Krishna perform miraculous feats, believed every word. Among whispers of wonder and skepticism, one thing was certain: the divine child Krishna continued to reveal glimpses of his extraordinary nature, leaving the people of Gokula both awestruck and mystified by the miracles surrounding him. Dhritarashtra recognized that the time had come to focus on his responsibilities as a king and solidify his grip on the power dynamics within the kingdom. Amidst this period of change, Kanika, an esteemed minister renowned for his unparalleled knowledge of the Vedas and Upanishads, rose to prominence. Kanika held a unique position of respect among the Council of Ministers, not merely for his erudition, but for his revolutionary interpretation of governance. His philosophy was deeply rooted in the essence of the Rig Vedic shloka, which says truth is one, but the wise speak of it in many ways. Kanika saw this principle not just as a spiritual truth, but as a profound guide to navigating the complexities of politics and human behavior. He studied the shloka deeply, merging its wisdom with the harsh realities of power dynamics. From this synthesis, Kanika authored the groundbreaking treatise, Kanika Nithi, a scripture that became a cornerstone of political strategy. This work advocated for subtlety, manipulation, and deceit when necessary, challenging traditional norms. It introduced principles such as power and deceit. A king must use cunning and deceit to overcome his enemies. Divide and rule. Enemies should be divided so they weaken each other. A divided enemy is easier to conquer. Suppressing rebellions. Any dissent within the kingdom must be suppressed ruthlessly to maintain authority. Diplomacy and alliances. Use alliances strategically, but always be prepared to betray them if it benefits the kingdom. Moral flexibility. Morality and ethics should always be secondary to power and survival. Kanaka Nithi quickly gained acclaim, with many Raja gurus incorporating its principles into their teachings. Its influence spread across the Bharata continent, cementing Kanaka's legacy as a pioneer of political thought. Shakuni, ever watchful of the external world while manipulating the internal court, identified Kanaka as a figure whose intellect and philosophy resonated with his own ambitions. Seeing an opportunity, Shakuni praised Kanaka's brilliance before Dhritarashtra, extolling the practical wisdom of Kanaka Nithi. Shakuni convinced the king that a mind like Kanaka's could greatly enhance the administration and strengthen Dhritarashtra's rule. Intrigued, Dhritarashtra invited Kanaka to Hastinapura with great honor. Kanaka was welcomed with a grand reception, showered with wealth and gold as a token of respect. Recognizing his exceptional intellect, Dhritarashtra appointed him as the chief minister, entrusting him with the role of providing strategic and political counsel. After Kanaka's arrival to Hastinapura, Dhritarashtra's focus soon became occupied with various personal and familial matters like Gandhari's prolonged pregnancy, the eventual birth of 100 children, and the time he devoted to nurturing and bonding with them. Now, as Dhritarashtra shifted his attention to consolidating his authority and strengthening his position as king, the stage was set for Kanaka to demonstrate his intelligence and strategic acumen. Kanaka was given the role of providing strategic and political advice in Dhritarashtra's council. His advice, rooted in Kanaka Nithi, guided the king in matters of diplomacy, warfare, and internal stability. While Dhritarashtra adopted these teachings to fortify his rule, he remained acutely aware of the boundaries defined by Dharma. He knew that his authority would last only as long as he adhered to righteous conduct. The moment he strayed from Dharma, Bhishma, the pillar of Hastinapura, could intervene and dismantle his reign effortlessly. Shakuni, too, delved into the Kanaka Nithi, but this powerful theory failed to influence him. He found nothing within its principles that surpassed his own cunning and strategic brilliance. Instead, Shakuni cleverly utilized the Kanaka Nithi as a tool to understand the character of Kanaka himself and manipulate the minister for his own designs, ensuring he could steer the minister's influence as needed. Bhishma, ever perceptive, recognized Shakuni's hand in the growing dynamics of the court. He saw how Shakuni leveraged Kanaka to sow seeds of discord and subtly shift the balance of power. In a tactful yet pointed conversation with Shakuni, Bhishma hinted at his awareness of the latter's schemes. Shakuni clearly understood the unspoken warning, despite Bhishma's unparalleled power, recalling the legendary war against Parashurama, where his might was unmatched. Bhishma chose to issue an indirect caution rather than directly expelling Shakuni from the capital. This made it evident to Shakuni that the only restraint on Bhishma was his reluctance to provoke Dhritarashtra into asserting his authority as king, which would bind Bhishma to obey, owing to his oath. Shakuni, with his calm and persuasive manner of speaking, indirectly conveyed to Bhishma that as long as Dhritarashtra ruled within the bounds of righteousness, Bhishma's hands would remain tied, and he knew how to do anything he wanted without breaking so-called Dharma. Though aware of Bhishma's capacity for unmatched destruction, Shakuni knew that Bhishma could do little against him as long as he operated within the shadows of Dhritarashtra's authority. And Bhishma knew that Shakuni understood it. Bhishma kept a vigilant eye on the unfolding dynamics. He understood that the balance of power in Hastinapura was delicately poised, with Dhritarashtra walking a fine line between dharma and ambition. Though Bhishma refrained from direct intervention, his subtle warnings reminded Shakuni and Kanika that the guardian of Hastinapura was always watching, ready to act if the integrity of the kingdom was threatened. Kanika became an additional source of power for Shakuni, further strengthening his ability to manipulate Dhritarashtra. Shakuni proposed a plan to Dhritarashtra to elevate the status of the Kuru princes and, by extension, the kingdom itself. He suggested organizing a grand exhibition of martial skills to showcase the unparalleled power of Dhritarashtra's sons to the entire Bharata continent. When Dhritarashtra dismissed the need, claiming that the fame of his sons had already spread across kingdoms, Shakuni countered with his persuasive charm. He argued that while others might have heard of the Kuru princes, this event would prove that they were not just heirs, but future warriors capable of wielding powers that could rival the gods themselves. He envisioned an event so grand that it would echo across the land for generations, establishing Hastinapura as the ultimate seat of power. Shakuni meticulously outlined a long-term plan. He emphasized the importance of preparing the Kuru princes from an early age. With Kripacharya, with his mastery in Dhanurvidha, and Bhishma, one of the select few capable of wielding divine astras and the ultimate disciple of Lord Parashurama himself, already in Hastinapura, the groundwork was perfect. He proposed rigorous training for the princes, ensuring they mastered every aspect of warfare. This preparation, though it might take over a decade, would culminate in a grand display of their skills, showcasing that Hastinapura was no ordinary kingdom, but a realm possessing the power to destroy the world many times over. Dhritarashtra, deeply impressed by Shakuni's vision and foresight, immediately issued an order for Kripacharya to commence the Vidhyabyasa, followed by intensive warfare training for the princes. The king believed that this initiative would cement Hastinapura's supremacy and bring unparalleled glory to his reign. Though the order came directly from the king, Kripacharya, out of his deep respect for Bhishma, informed him before proceeding. Bhishma, though momentarily troubled by the motivations behind the king's decision, chose not to object. He understood that as long as the intent aligned with the welfare of Hastinapura, he would not interfere unnecessarily. In their discussion, Bhishma sought Kripacharya's perspective. The latter, reflecting on his own journey, recounted the events that brought him to Hastinapura. Kripacharya reflected in his mind on how his father, the great sage Sharadwantha, had been an unparalleled master of Dhanurvidha. Sharadwantha, in pursuit of even greater power, had undertaken a rigorous penance to gain knowledge of Divyastras. However, Indra, fearing the sage's growing prowess, sent the celestial maiden Jalapada to distract him. Sharadwantha, momentarily succumbing to human desire at the sight of Jalapada, lost his focus. His seed fell to the ground, splitting into 2 drops. Shocked by this unexpected event, Sharadwantha, realizing it was guided by fate, decided to entrust the care of these drops to the divine. He gathered the drops and took them to Bharadwaja, an expert in Atharva Veda, particularly in the subject of creation of life. Bharadwaja, through his divine knowledge, created an artificial womb and nurtured the 2 drops into twins, a male and a female child. Sharadwantha, deeply broken by the disturbance to his penance, whose ultimate goal is to renounce worldly life and embrace sannyasa, saw the 2 children as new bonds that tied him to the material world. Entrusting their lives to divine will, he placed his faith in the gods and left the infants in the forest, surrendering their fate to the hands of destiny. It was King Shantanu, Bhishma's father, who discovered the abandoned infants during a hunting expedition. Moved by compassion, Shantanu brought the twins to the palace and ensured they were raised with care and dignity. Out of gratitude for the king's mercy, the children were named Krupa and Krupi. As they grew, Krupa developed a keen interest in Dhanurveda, dedicating himself to mastering every intricate detail of the art of warfare. Dhanurveda, the ancient and intricate science of warfare, encompassed every conceivable detail required to wield weapons with precision and mastery. It was a discipline that began with the fundamentals: how to hold a bow, tie the bowstring, and position the shoulder at the correct height for optimal force and accuracy. It detailed the placement of arrows, the method of drawing them swiftly, and the precise positioning needed to shoot effectively. The art extended to the nuances of technique: which fingers to use to pull the bowstring, the correct posture while standing, running, or riding, be it on horseback or atop an elephant. It taught warriors how to aim and shoot targets positioned above them, as well as those below, requiring an exceptional sense of balance and focus. The discipline also included swordsmanship, with instructions on how to tie a sword to the hip, draw it swiftly, and wield it with precision, specifying the hand positioning and movement needed for each situation. Though every Kshatriya was introduced to the foundational principles of Dhanurveda, few possessed the dedication, discipline, and intellect to truly master this demanding art. Among the rare individuals who achieved unparalleled expertise was Krupa, whose unwavering focus and dedication elevated him to the pinnacle of this revered science. Through relentless practice and a natural affinity for the intricacies of combat, Krupa became one of the most distinguished masters of Dhanurveda, embodying its essence with perfection and grace. Due to his exceptional skills, Bhishma appointed Krupa as the royal guru of Hastinapura, entrusting him with the responsibility of training the princes, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. Recalling his journey, Kripacharya expressed to Bhishma his unwavering gratitude to King Shantanu, who had saved his life and given him purpose. He vowed to dedicate his skills and wisdom to the prosperity of Hastinapura. Bhishma, hearing Kripacharya's words, felt a deep sense of pride and relief. He appreciated Kripacharya's loyalty and his understanding of duty, recognizing in him a steadfast ally for the kingdom. While Bhishma remained vigilant, aware of Shakuni's growing influence, he took solace in knowing that individuals like Kripacharya and Vidura were devoted to the welfare of Hastinapura. Together, they would ensure the kingdom stood strong amidst the undercurrents of manipulation and ambition, preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. In the vast arid lands that lay between Hastinapura and the distant Sibhila territories, there existed a treacherous passage known as Panchagiri. This dry, mountainous region was infamous for its bandits, a ruthless group that preyed upon traders and their caravans. Tales of these marauders spread far and wide among merchants, warning them to be cautious when traversing the perilous route. The bandits, known for their daring and coordinated attacks, had made Panchagiri a place of dread and unavoidable risk. In the markets of Hastinapura, the traders spoke of the bandits' meticulous strategy. As the caravans moved in a line, the bandits would strike without warning. A group of 6 to 10 armed riders, wielding swords and bows, would appear on horseback, flanking the convoy on both sides. The sight of these armed men was enough to instill fear in the unarmed traders, who could do little but watch helplessly. Behind the riders followed the robbers' own carts. As the first group maintained pressure and intimidation, another set of bandits, 10 or more, would leap from their moving carts onto the traders' wagons. With practiced precision, they would transfer goods to their own carts, even as both caravans moved. Once the theft was complete, the bandits would vanish into the rugged terrain, leaving the traders with empty hands and heavy losses. For many merchants, avoiding Panchagiri was impractical, as it was the most direct route to Hastinapura, but crossing it often meant facing devastating losses. Despite the traders bringing the matter to the attention of the kings, the issue of banditry in Panchagiri was largely dismissed. The region, located on the borders of multiple kingdoms, was an arid and desolate land that held little strategic or economic value, leading the rulers to overlook its plight. The local youth in Hastinapura, aware of the traders' plight, guided them toward an unconventional solution. They spoke of a mysterious individual, a daring and skilled archer, known for undertaking dangerous tasks. The traders, desperate for relief, sought out this enigmatic figure. The youth assured the traders that this man's skills and courage were unmatched, and he could bring the bandits to justice. The caravan cautiously entered Panchagiri, the traders tense and alert, their eyes scanning the rugged terrain for any sign of trouble. The eerie silence of the dry, mountainous passage did little to ease their fears. The wheels of the carts creaked against the rocky path, a sound that seemed to echo ominously. Then, as if summoned by their dread, the bandits appeared. From both sides, armed horsemen emerged, flanking the convoy. Their swords glinted menacingly under the sun, and their bows were drawn, ready to strike. The traders, unarmed and vulnerable, could do nothing but hold their breath and hope for mercy. As the first group of bandits created a perimeter, the second group, riding on their own carts, advanced. With practiced ease, they leapt onto the traders' wagons and began transferring goods to their own. The traders watched helplessly, their despair deepening with each stolen item. As the bandits were busy transferring goods from the traders' wagons, a series of arrows shot out from seemingly nowhere. The arrows struck with precision, knocking several bandits off the wagons and scattering their loot. The remaining bandits froze in shock, their eyes darting around to locate the unseen attacker. Their confusion mounted as more arrows rained down, disarming them and breaking their ranks. Then, all at once, their eyes turned toward one of the wagons. From within the stacks of goods, a figure emerged, with bow in hand, exuding an aura of command and confidence. descended gracefully from the concealed depths of the goods, emerging with an air of quiet resolve and latent ferocity. Without wasting a moment, Karna leapt from the wagon with the agility of a seasoned warrior. His arrows flew with unerring accuracy, striking down bandits one after another, leaving no room for retaliation. The traders could hardly believe their eyes. The man who stood before them, battling the notorious bandits with unmatched skill and courage. Karna's arrows flew with breathtaking speed and precision. His self-taught skills in archery and combat shone as he targeted the bandits with unerring accuracy. An arrow struck the leader of the horsemen, toppling him from his saddle. Another arrow pierced the wheel of one of the bandits' carts, immobilizing it and preventing an escape. Seeing their leader fall, the bandits, now enraged, began firing arrows at Karna while riding their horses alongside the moving traders' wagons. Karna vaulted onto a galloping horse with seamless precision, guiding it swiftly through the fray to secure a vantage point for targeting the bandits more effectively. The arrows, shot with precision, struck Karna but shattered upon impact, as though mere stones hitting an unyielding mountain. Born with a natural kavacha, Karna remained unscathed, standing resolute amidst the chaos. The bandits, witnessing this unnatural event, were gripped with a mix of fear and disbelief. The sight of their arrows breaking against Karna's impenetrable form left them in a dilemma. Should they retreat to save themselves, or summon the courage to continue the fight against this seemingly invincible warrior? But Karna, using the terrain to his advantage, he maneuvered between the moving carts, firing arrows and engaging in close combat when necessary. As more bandits joined the fray, Karna used his speed and strength to outmatch them. His arrows kept coming, each one striking with deadly precision. When the dust settled, the traders, still atop their moving carts, looked around in astonishment, their expressions a mix of relief and awe. Despite the chaos and danger of the battle, their goods remained intact, and the bandits lay defeated along the rugged trail. Karna stood amidst the moving convoy, his bow in hand, his composure unshaken despite the intensity of the fight. For the first time in years, a goods convoy had crossed Panchagiri without falling victim to the infamous bandits. The traders, in their thankfulness, offered gold coins to Karna as a reward for his bravery. However, Karna refused their offer with a humble smile, stating that he did not act for material gain, but because he believed it was the right thing to do. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the traders began spreading tales of the daring warrior who had rescued them. In the intricate social fabric of the world at the time, the oral exchange of information in public gatherings, casual conversations, debates, and rumors served as a pivotal medium for the dissemination of knowledge and understanding within society. Beneath this visible layer of communal chatter operated an unseen and highly effective secret network, the Vegus. Vegus agents lived unassuming lives, seamlessly blending into the fabric of society as ordinary individuals. Their identities were shrouded in mystery, often known by common names that concealed their true personas. They inhabited roles across all strata of society, from humble workers to influential figures, making them indispensable for gathering intelligence and shaping public opinion. The royal palace of Hastinapura operated with a meticulously organized administrative system, with critical departments such as fortress guard commanders, city administrators, royal performers, entertainers, horse keepers, elephant keepers, messengers, diplomats, treasurers, and many other essential roles. This vast and complex structure was officially under the management and oversight of the Grand Minister Vidura, whose wisdom and efficiency ensured the smooth functioning of the kingdom's operations. Beneath this structured and transparent hierarchy thrived the enigmatic and shadowy network of the Vagus. This covert system infiltrated every department of the palace, its agents seamlessly embedding themselves into various roles. From the fortress guard commanders to humble stable workers, Vagus were present, their true identities concealed even from one another. The brilliance of the Vagus system lay in its anonymity. No agent knew the identity of another, creating an intricate web of secrecy and deception. They operated in silence, observing and collecting intelligence from the very heart of the kingdom. Whether it was whispers exchanged in the barracks, plans discussed in the treasury, or casual remarks overheard during royal performances, the Vagus ensured that no detail escaped their notice. These informers were tasked with observing the public pulse, listening intently to the common discourse to gauge the mindset and emotions of various groups within society. They served as the kingdom's silent eyes and ears, recording the thoughts and concerns of the populace. They moved unnoticed among their peers, living double lives as ordinary workers and shadow agents. Their allegiance, however, lay not with the department heads or even with Vidura, but with the mastermind who controlled the network from the shadows. The mastermind behind this extraordinary intelligence network was a shadowy figure who meticulously orchestrated its every move and ensured its flawless operation. This enigmatic architect is none other than Kanika, who paid the informers handsomely, rewarding those who provided valuable intelligence. But his identity always remained shrouded in mystery. Kanika's origins were an enigma. No one knew his birthplace, his lineage, or anything about his parents or family. He was an absolute nobody, a figure who seemed to have emerged from nowhere, yet wielded immense power and influence. His anonymity was his greatest strength, allowing him to operate without detection and maintain an unparalleled grip over the network he had created. More than mere gatherers of information, Vagus agents wielded significant influence. Over time, they integrated deeply into local communities, gaining the trust of the people. This allowed them to subtly spread rumors, manipulate narratives, and guide public opinion, often steering the thoughts of the masses in favor of their masters' agendas. What began as a system devised by Kanika, rooted in intelligence and strategic insight, had now fallen under the control of Shakuni, who wielded this apparatus through his influence over Kanika. Shakuni's cunning transformed the Vagus network into a tool of unparalleled power, capable of altering the perception of reality itself. From shaping political landscapes to inciting unrest or pacifying dissent, the system of Vagus became a formidable weapon in the hands of the master strategist. The grand event, proposed by Shakuni to Dhritarashtra, was outlined as a long-term strategy to establish the dominance of Hastinapura and elevate the stature of its royal princes. Shakuni meticulously explained that the 100 Kuru princes would undergo exceptional training for 12 to 15 years, mastering the art of warfare and excelling in Astra-Vidya, the science of weaponry. Then, just 1 year before the grand event, the news of this grand martial display would be announced across the Bharati continent. By the time the kingdoms received the announcement, they would have only 1 year to train their warriors and prepare for the competition, while the Kuru princes would already have over a decade of rigorous practice behind them. This disparity in preparation time would ensure that the Hastinapura princes outshone their counterparts from other kingdoms, displaying unparalleled skill, valor, and dominance. The event would send a powerful message, not only of the might and superiority of Dhritarashtra's sons, but also of the unassailable position of Hastinapura as the most formidable kingdom in the land. Dhritarashtra, impressed by the brilliance of Shakuni's plan, wholeheartedly approved it. He believed it was the perfect strategy to solidify the legacy of his sons and his reign as the ruler of Hastinapura. When Shakuni grasped the immense potential of the Vegu's network, he began to receive a steady stream of intelligence spanning vast regions and kingdoms. From the information, like tale of a young boy from Hastinapura who single-handedly vanquished the infamous bandit gang of Panchagiri, to information about a tribe called the Nishada, stories spoke of their ability to take down a massive bear with effortless precision, treating such feats as mere play. Shakuni clearly recognized that extraordinary individuals with natural warrior instincts existed across the land. While the surface plan of the grand event was aimed to glorify the Kuru princes and Hastinapura, Shakuni's deeper intention was far more insidious. Using the Vegu system, Shakuni subtly spread the news of an upcoming grand martial skills competition, set to take place in the next 15 years. The event was described as an extraordinary gathering, where kings and warriors from all over the Bharata continent would converge to showcase their prowess. This news gradually spread through common conversations in local gatherings, first throughout Hastinapura and then reaching many other kingdoms. It ignited a wave of preparation across the land, spreading excitement and anticipation. From every kingdom and village, most of the skilled people decided to begin preparing not only for the demonstration of warrior skills, but also for a diverse range of talents. The event promised to be a grand spectacle, showcasing abilities in charioteering, horse riding, elephant handling, music and dance, singing praises and mantras, painting and sculpture. It was a celebration of artistry, athleticism, and intellect, attracting participants from all walks of life. As the climactic highlight of the event, the gurus would present their disciples in a dramatic showcase of their abilities. These disciples would compete against those trained by other gurus, demonstrating their mastery in the art of warfare and highlighting the dedication, discipline, and brilliance imparted through their training. This final act was designed to not only captivate the audience, but also solidify the legacy of the gurus and their disciples on a continental scale. With the news of the Grand Martial Skills event subtly spread across Bharata through the Vegu system, the seeds of Shakuni's scheme began to take root. From every kingdom and village, capable individuals, driven by ambition and pride, embarked on rigorous training to perfect their craft. Over the years, these warriors, shaped by discipline, hardship, and the desire to prove themselves, would transform into formidable forces. Among them, many would emerge as great warriors, possessing strength, skill, and talent that rivaled even the best of the Kuru princes. Shakuni understood that when the time came for the event, the stage would be set for a tense atmosphere. The warriors who gathered there, after years of preparation, would realize something crucial: that the Kuru princes held no extraordinary abilities beyond their own. This realization, subtle but powerful, would shift perceptions. It would plant thoughts of equality or even superiority among the visiting warriors and their kingdoms. A competitive rivalry would take root, not just on the grounds of the event, but within the hearts of these warriors. The pride of kingdoms, the desire for recognition, and the hunger for dominance would converge, fostering an underlying warlike atmosphere in every kingdom that will continue for generations to come. By the time the event concluded, Bharata would be teeming with men who had trained relentlessly for over a decade, warriors who excelled in warfare, tactics, and strategy. With such a vast pool of skilled fighters, kingdoms would naturally gravitate toward territorial ambition and conflict. War would no longer be seen as destruction, but as a stage for honor and glory, where might determined respect and supremacy. Shakuni's calculated move was not merely to showcase the talents of the Kuru princes, but to cultivate as many warriors as possible around Hastinapura, to ignite pride in showcasing their skills, fueling their ambition, and to destabilize the delicate peace, not only in the kingdom, but in the entire Jambu Dweepa. He had foreseen an era rife with rivalry, ambition, and unrest, where every kingdom's preparation for the grand event would inevitably sow the seeds for future conflict over Hastinapura's decades of dominance. The harmony of Bharata would crumble, and the shadow of war would loom, as Shakuni's design slowly began to reshape the very fabric of the land. Drona, though living a humble life as a farmer for years, carried a profound dissatisfaction deep within his heart. Outwardly, he provided for his family, ensuring their sustenance, but within him simmered a silent unrest, an ache that even he could not fully articulate. His wife, Krupi, ever perceptive and devoted, was quick to sense her husband's silent struggle. Krupi, who had never placed value on wealth or material comforts, cared only for Drona's well-being. To her, it was unbearable to see his immense wisdom and the brilliance of his unparalleled mastery over the divine astras, and such greatness languishing unused, unnoticed, and uncelebrated. Their son, Ashwathama, a child of extraordinary destiny, was already under Drona's tutelage. With his father as his guru, Ashwathama diligently absorbed the Vedas and the principles of Dharma, proving to be a sincere and obedient disciple. Endowed with the sacred Shivamani, the celestial gem with which he was born, a divine blessing from Lord Shiva gleamed brilliantly upon his head. Ashwathama possessed extraordinary abilities. This gem made him immune to hunger, thirst, fatigue, aging, disease, mortal weapons, and even demonic forces. It rendered him invincible and immortal, marking him as a being destined for greatness. Despite the seemingly tranquil life they lived, Krupi often observed the distant look in Drona's eyes and his lingering silences. Day after day, he carried out his duties as a farmer, yet something within him remained unsettled. Unable to bear the sight of his quiet suffering, Krupi approached him gently and asked softly what troubled his heart, for she sensed that his spirit was burdened by something far greater than their humble existence. Drona revealed to Krupi the root of his discontent, how he, the bearer of the sacred knowledge of supernatural weapons, felt bound to a life unworthy of such a gift. This knowledge was no ordinary skill, but a priceless mastery attained through rigorous training under his guru, Lord Parashurama himself. Yet here he was, far from the purpose that seemed destined for him, living a life of quiet insignificance. He said that a feeling, constant and unrelenting, whispered within him that this was not the path he was meant to walk. Krupi, understanding the magnitude of her husband's anguish, suggested an alternative she had quietly considered. As Drona already rejected to visit Hastinapura, she spoke of Magadha, another powerful kingdom where Drona's extraordinary abilities would be honored, where his knowledge of astras would earn him reverence and stature. She believed such a place could offer the fulfillment his restless heart sought. But Drona was resolute in his refusal. He could not ignore the complexities that Magadha represented. It was an enemy to Hastinapura, the kingdom where Krupi's own brother, Kripacharya, served as the royal guru. If Drona were to align himself with Magadha, he feared fate might someday force him into a confrontation, one where he and Kripacharya would stand on opposing sides. The thought of raising his weapon against someone he respected and loved weighed far too heavily on his conscience. To Drona, such a path was unacceptable, no matter how promising it appeared. Krupi listened in silence, her heart aching for her husband's moral dilemma. The anguish he felt was now hers as well. She suggested that he perform a Shiva puja, assuring him that the supreme god Shiva would grant him peace and show the path he was destined to follow. Drona, too, resolved to seek guidance and peace through the one force that could heal anyone's troubled soul. With unwavering focus, he began a sacred Shiva puja, offering his prayers to the supreme power of the universe. Immersing himself in the rituals, Drona sought not worldly riches, but inner peace and clarity of his destiny. A few days later, as Drona carried out his daily farming duties, he found himself engaged in casual conversation with a fellow villager. Amid their idle chatter, the man brought up a piece of intriguing gossip: the news of a grand martial skills event to be held in Hastinapura in the coming decade. He spoke with palpable excitement, describing how the entire land was abuzz with preparations, and people everywhere had begun practicing various skills in earnest. Initially, Drona paid little attention to this information, brushing it aside as something distant and of little concern. But then, the man casually mentioned his grandson's fascination with horse riding. The boy dreamed of becoming a great horse rider, yet he knew nothing of the skill itself. These simple words struck a chord deep within Drona, planting an idea that took root in his mind. He shared the news with Krupi. Krupi smiled with unwavering faith and conviction, telling Drona that Lord Shiva had truly guided him to his path. She explained that she, too, had overheard similar discussions among villagers. From young boys of 5 or 6 years to grown men, people across the kingdom were brimming with enthusiasm, practicing sword fighting, archery, and other combat arts to prepare for the grand event. With profound certainty, she suggested that perhaps this was Drona's destiny, to train the future warriors who would one day shape the fate of the land. Drona hesitated. While the spark of purpose had been ignited within him, he remained unsure of how to begin. Who would approach him, a simple farmer, to seek training? His doubts lingered, but before he could voice them, young Ashwathama, listening intently to his parents, stepped forward with determination. The boy proclaimed with confidence that he would learn everything his father knew and win the great competition, bringing honor to their family. Drona, hearing these words, felt a rare smile grace his face, a smile that had not been seen for many years. A sense of purpose began to replace his long-held restlessness. He resolved to train his son and anyone else who came to him with a true desire to learn. With newfound determination, Drona began laying the foundations of a training ashram. Within a short time, he built a modest training ashram amidst the tranquil surroundings of their land. The serene environment became a sanctum of discipline and learning. There, Drona started his instruction, beginning with the foundational principles of Dhanurveda, the sacred science of archery and warfare. Ashwathama became his first disciple, diligently absorbing every lesson his father imparted. As the news of the grand event spread quietly through whispers and secret channels, had inspired many gurus across the land to establish their own ashrams to train aspiring warriors. Children, teenagers, and young adults, driven by the allure of the upcoming competition, flocked to these training centers. Shakuni's strategy appeared to be unfolding just as he had planned, with the news of the grand event sparking widespread excitement and preparation. But what no one could foresee was how fate, with its mysterious and unpredictable ways, would influence the lives of those touched by his scheme. When the news reached Karna with a natural inclination toward archery, hearing about the grand event, Karna saw it as a golden opportunity to showcase his talent and pursue his dreams. Inspired by the chance to prove himself, he was drawn deeper into the world of combat and skill. Yet, as always, fate had its own plans, and how this moment would shape Karna's journey remained a mystery waiting to unfold. In a quaint village near the bustling city of Hastinapura, a humble Brahmin struggled to make a living amidst the competitive environment dominated by learned priests who performed grand yagnas and rituals. Seeking a way to sustain himself and create a niche, he decided to purchase a cow. This simple yet profound decision transformed his life in unexpected ways. The cow, a gentle creature with large, soulful eyes, became his constant companion. Over time, the Brahmin developed a deep bond with her, treating her not merely as a source of sustenance, but as a cherished member of his family. Her milk was used in rituals, and the purity of her presence brought him a modest yet steady stream of customers seeking his services. The once struggling Brahmin began to find a semblance of stability, his days brightened by the companionship of the cow. Her unconditional affection mirrored the love he showered upon her, creating a bond that transcended mere utility. One fateful evening, the peace of the village was shattered by the heart-wrenching cries of his neighbor. Rushing to the scene, the Brahmin discovered a horrifying sight. A tiger had prowled into the village, hunting the neighbor's newborn calf. The predator had not stopped there. It had also savagely attacked the mother cow, leaving her bleeding and on the verge of death. The villagers, gathering in sorrow and fear, lamented the loss and the looming threat of the tiger's return. The Brahmin, witnessing this tragedy, was deeply shaken. His thoughts immediately turned to his own beloved cow. The fear of losing her, not for the income she provided, but for the profound emotional connection he shared with her, consumed him. The Brahmin knew he could not bear such a loss. The very thought of harm befalling her was unbearable. Haunted by the grim possibility, he made the difficult decision to move to another side of the village, far from the tiger's usual roaming grounds. It was not an easy choice, uprooting his simple life, but his love and care for the cow outweighed all other considerations. He found a small house on the quieter side of the village and settled there with her, ensuring she was as far from danger as possible. Meanwhile, the villagers, united by the common threat, organized nightly patrols to guard against the tiger. Taking turns, they stayed awake under the starry skies, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the predator. The Brahmin, though now in a safer part of the village, joined the villagers in their vigilance, driven not only by his own fears, but also by a sense of duty to his community. The village, once peaceful, now lived in a state of cautious tension. Its people, bound together by their collective resolve to protect their lives and livelihoods from the lurking menace. Karna, with his innate passion for archery, was overjoyed upon hearing the news of the grand event through casual conversations with his friends. This was an opportunity he had dreamed of, a chance to showcase his skills and prove his mettle. He eagerly shared the news with his mother, Radha, his excitement radiating through every word. Though Radha was pleased to see her son so animated, a shadow of concern crossed her face. She knew her husband, Adiratha, had always discouraged Karna from pursuing archery because he feared that the son of a charioteer, with natural divine armor and excellent archery skills, might provoke envy among Kshatriyas and could easily stir jealousy and resentment among the warrior class. When Adiratha learned of Karna's determination to participate, he sighed, understanding that his repeated attempts to steer Karna away from bows and arrows had done little to diminish his son's unwavering interest. He realized this might be fate's design, a path that Karna was destined to walk. Resigned, Adiratha sat down with his son for a serious conversation. Gently, yet with a father's caution, Adiratha explained that what Karna is doing with bows now is not true archery. The competitors in this event will be highly trained warriors who have spent years mastering the art under the guidance of accomplished gurus in Veda. Archery is not merely about hitting a target. It is a discipline of both skill and moral responsibility. Karna, brimming with youthful confidence, remained undeterred. To prove his point, he selected a distant object and struck it effortlessly with his arrow, demonstrating remarkable precision. Adiratha, though astonished by his son's natural talent, maintained his composure. Without letting his surprise show, he reminded Karna calmly yet firmly that such a demonstration, impressive as it might be, was insignificant compared to what the royal princes and other highly trained warriors would exhibit at the grand event. Listening to his father dismiss his extraordinary natural skill so simply, Karna felt a surge of frustration. The lack of recognition stung deeply, igniting a determination within Karna to prove not just to his father, but to the entire world, the extent of his capabilities. As they were deep in conversation, Karna's friends arrived, bringing with them a distressed villager. The man, shaken and desperate, explained that a tiger had been terrorizing their community, attacking villagers and preying on their cows and calves. Hearing the plight of the villager, Karna's resolve strengthened. Without hesitation, he decided to help. driven by his determination to protect the villagers and prove his abilities, ventured into the nearby forest to hunt the tiger that had caused so much fear and destruction. His initial search yielded only faint paw prints and remnants of the tiger's meals. Scattered bones gnawed clean. The predator itself remained elusive. Frustrated but resolute, Karna decided to wait for the tiger to strike again, certain it would return to the village. As dusk fell, the tiger emerged once more, prowling near the edge of the village. Karna, prepared for this moment, nocked an arrow and released it toward the beast. Startled by the arrow grazing past it, the tiger panicked and bolted into the village. Karna, undeterred, pursued the animal, his arrows flying one after another, yet none found their mark. Each missed shot echoed his father Adhiratha's words in his mind, a humbling reminder that his skills were not as refined as he had believed. The tiger, wounded but not fatally, darted through the narrow alleys of the village, weaving between homes and becoming an increasingly difficult target. Determined to end the chase, Karna sought higher ground. He climbed a tree to gain a clear view and scoured the terrain for the fleeing animal. In the distance, amidst the shadows, he saw a flicker of orange movement behind a tree. Convinced it was the tiger, he drew his bowstring with unwavering focus and released multiple arrows in quick succession to ensure it would not escape again. Relief washed over him as the figure collapsed, and Karna climbed down to inspect his kill. But as he approached, his confidence turned to horror. Lying before him was not the tiger, but a cow, its lifeless body pierced by his arrows. The same cow belonged to the Brahmin who had moved to this part of the village to protect it from tiger attacks. The Brahmin, hearing the commotion, arrived at the scene and was struck by the devastating sight of his beloved cow lying dead. Overcome with grief, he let out heart-wrenching cries that echoed through the village. To him, the cow was more than livestock. It was a companion, a provider, and a part of his family. His sorrow was immeasurable, and he mourned as though he had lost a child. Karna stood frozen, the weight of his actions bearing down on him like never before. The Brahmin turned to him, his tear-filled eyes locking onto the bow in Karna's hand. With trembling lips, he asked if Karna was responsible for this cruel act. Unable to lie, Karna admitted, his voice shaking, that he had mistaken the cow for the tiger he was pursuing. The Brahmin, enraged and grief-stricken, demanded to know who had taught Karna archery, for it was clear to him that Karna lacked the wisdom to distinguish between a predator and an innocent creature. Karna, hesitant and filled with shame, revealed that he had no guru. The Brahmin's frustration only deepened, and he demanded to know who Karna was. Karna hesitated before revealing his identity, eventually stating that he was Karna, the son of Adhiratha, a charioteer. The Brahmin's grief transformed into unrestrained anger upon hearing this. He viewed Karna's actions as not only reckless, but also as the misuse of a skill that lacked the wisdom imparted by a guru. Consumed by his sorrow and rage, the Brahmin uttered a curse, declaring that just as Karna had destroyed his source of sustenance, the chariot, a symbol of Karna's identity, would betray him in his most critical moment, sinking into the earth and leading to his downfall. The curse hit Karna like a thunderclap. His bow slipped from his hand as he dropped to his knees, his heart heavy with despair. Tears welled in his eyes as he begged the Brahmin for forgiveness. Karna explained that he was trying to protect the villagers and their cattle from the tiger, and that his actions, though misguided, were born of good intentions. He pleaded for a chance to atone for his mistake, to make amends for the harm he had caused. But the Brahmin, inconsolable, remained firm in his grief and anger. He rejected any notion of forgiveness, convinced that no apology could undo the irreversible loss he had suffered. In his sorrow, he emphasized the weight of wielding a weapon without wisdom or guidance, believing that Karna needed to face the consequences of his reckless actions to truly understand their gravity. Defeated and shattered, Karna stood motionless, the weight of the curse and his own guilt bearing down upon him. The bow, once a symbol of his dreams and aspirations, now felt like a burden too great to bear. As his father's words echoed in his mind, reminders of the discipline, responsibility, and understanding that he lacked, Karna found himself trapped in a harrowing dilemma. Should he abandon the bow forever and accept the life of a charioteer, as his father had always urged? Or should he continue to strive, despite his failures, to prove himself worthy of the path he had chosen? Torn between regret and resolve, Karna walked away. In the tranquil abode of Shatashringa, Pandu found contentment in the simple life of a sage. Surrounded by the vibrant energy of his 5 sons and the companionship of his devoted wives, Kunthi and Madri, he appeared at peace. Pandu dedicated his time to imparting the wisdom of Dharma to his eldest son, Yudhishthira, ensuring that the boy would grow into a leader of virtue and integrity. As the arrival of spring adorned the landscape with vibrant hues, the rishis residing in the ashram prepared to leave for their pilgrimage to the Himalayas. To honor their departure, Kunti busied herself in preparing a grand feast for their farewell. Amid the bustle of preparations, Pandu, drawn by the allure of the spring season, decided to visit a nearby flower forest known for its ethereal beauty. He invited Madri to accompany him. The pair ventured into the blooming forest, where nature displayed its finest artistry. Pandu reveled in the spectacle, his heart light and filled with joy. Madri, clad in a flowing sari, walked gracefully behind him, her presence complementing the serene surroundings. But as they wandered deeper into the forest, an overwhelming desire overtook Pandu. Years of abstinence had left him vulnerable to the sudden surge of passion that now consumed him. Unable to restrain himself, Pandu approached Madri with a lustful urgency. Though Madri resisted, reminding him of the curse that loomed over him, Pandu, blinded by desire, overpowered her. The union was brief, but its consequences were swift and irreversible. No sooner had the act concluded than Pandu collapsed lifelessly to the ground. The curse, foretold by the sage Kindama, had come to pass. Madri, struck by the enormity of what had occurred, cried out in anguish. Her piercing wails echoed through the forest, reaching Kunti, who was nearby with the children. Alarmed, Kunti instructed the boys to remain where they were and hurried toward the source of the cries. She found Madri kneeling beside Pandu's lifeless body, her face etched with shock and despair. Kunti, overwhelmed with grief, questioned Madri. How could this happen when both she and Pandu were well aware of the curse? How could a man who had lived as a sage for so many years suddenly succumb to such desires? Madri, her voice trembling, explained the events. She confessed that despite her resistance, Pandu's desire had overpowered him, and she had been unable to prevent the tragedy. The cries of grief attracted the rishis, who soon gathered at the scene. They offered their condolences, consoling Kunthi and Madri. They reminded them that Pandu had lived a life filled with diverse experiences, as a prince, a king, a warrior, and finally a sage. His penance and virtues would surely grant him a place in the heavens. Yudhisthira and his brothers, informed of their father's death, arrived to pay their respects. The young princes wept bitterly, their grief palpable as they mourned the loss of their father. Madri, consumed by guilt, declared her intent to join Pandu in death, believing herself responsible for the tragedy. Kunthi intervened, insisting that as the first wife, it was her duty to sacrifice herself. But the rishis urged them both to reconsider for the sake of the children, who were too young to face the world without their mother's guidance. Despite their appeals, Madri remained resolute. She believed Kunthi, with her inherent fairness and maternal strength, was better suited to raise the Pandavas. She entrusted her sons to Kunthi, asking her to treat them as her own. Madri then bid farewell to the rishis, the Brahmins, and Pandavas, instructing them to look to Yudhishthira as their father figure in Pandu's absence. Kunthi, with a heavy heart, granted Madri her wish, blessing her to reunite with Pandu in the afterlife. The pyre was prepared, and Pandu's body was placed upon it. Madri joined him, lying beside her husband as the pyre was lit. Flames engulfed the pile, consuming both bodies in a final, tragic act of devotion. Kunthi and the Pandavas watched in profound sorrow, the weight of the loss settling heavily upon their young shoulders. The once vibrant forest now stood as a solemn witness to the sorrowful end of a valiant king and his devoted queen. Madri's screams pierced the stillness of the forest, reverberating across the Shatashringa region, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of all who heard them. Meanwhile, in the grand palace of Hastinapura, the sprawling courtyard resounded with the clash of weapons and the grunts of young warriors in training. Kripacharya, the royal preceptor and a master of warfare, had been entrusted by King Dhritarashtra with the responsibility of shaping the Kuru princes into formidable warriors and leaders. Under his stern but patient guidance, the princes began their rigorous training in various martial and intellectual disciplines. Kripacharya's training regimen was rigorous and meticulously designed to shape the princes into versatile and formidable warriors. It encompassed a wide array of disciplines, including expertise in weaponry such as swordsmanship, archery, and mace combat. Swordsmanship training included precision, speed, and defense techniques. Duryodhana showed exceptional skill with the sword, relishing the fierce combat style and often sparring with his brothers. Archery techniques of aiming, quick-draw shooting, and hitting moving targets. Dushasana, though less precise than others, enjoyed the aggressive tactics of archery. Mace fighting focused on strength, stamina, and skill in wielding heavy maces. Duryodhana excelled in this discipline, showing unparalleled power and aggression. His dedication to this craft earned him the admiration of his peers. Horse riding and chariotry training involved controlling horses in combat scenarios, riding through obstacles, and using chariots for war. Vikarna, one of the more disciplined princes, demonstrated exceptional control over horses and skill in chariot navigation. Elephant warfare, learning to command and fight atop war elephants, which is critical for battles. Chitrasena, known for his calm demeanor, showed a natural affinity for handling elephants, earning Kripacharya's praise. Wrestling and physical training includes intense wrestling sessions to build strength, endurance, and hand-to-hand combat skills. Dushasana and Duryodhana often sparred, their matches marked by fierce competitiveness. Spear combats like techniques for throwing and close combat spear fighting. Dumukha, known for his agility, was particularly skilled with the spear. Strategic training like lessons on military formations, battlefield strategies, and the use of psychological warfare. Duryodhana, with his leadership tendencies, took a keen interest in this area, though his strategies often reflected his overconfidence. Defense techniques like shield techniques and how to protect oneself from multiple attackers. Many princes excelled here, as Kripacharya emphasized the importance of defense as much as offense. While martial skills were crucial, Kripacharya also ensured the princes were trained in governance and philosophy. Kripacharya emphasized the principles of Rajyadharma, duty of kings, and ethical decision-making. Duryodhana often resisted these lessons, finding them restrictive, while Karna showed genuine interest. Lessons in negotiation, alliance building, and the art of debate. Duryodhana, despite his impulsive nature, displayed sharp political acumen, often engaging Kripacharya in discussions about statecraft. Basic knowledge of taxation, trade, and resource management to prepare them for governance. Dumukha showed a knack for understanding economic principles, study of ancient texts, stories of great kings, and moral lessons from the epics. Many of the princes found this part dull, but Chitrasena listened intently, learning from past successes and failures. The palace courtyard was a bustling arena of training. The clang of weapons, the thud of bodies hitting the ground, and the commands of Kripacharya filled the air. Under his watchful eye, the Kuru princes transformed into formidable warriors, their strengths and weaknesses sharpening their individual identities. Vidura, known for his calm demeanor and soft-spoken nature, was nevertheless a sharp and astute strategist when it came to matters of politics. Despite Shakuni's growing influence and his deft manipulation of public sentiment through the deep state Vegu network, Vidura maintained his own covert channels of information. His secret agents operated discreetly, delivering vital intelligence that kept him informed of the undercurrents within and beyond Hastinapura. It was through these agents that Vidura learned of the widespread interest the Grand Martial event had generated across the continent. The news of the event, which had been quietly spread by Shakuni, had captured the imagination of people in every kingdom. Individuals from all walks of life, from seasoned warriors to enthusiastic novices, were training rigorously to showcase their skills and participate in the event. Recognizing the implications of this development, Vidura promptly informed Bhishma. Together, they analyzed the situation and deduced the underlying strategy behind Shakuni's actions. It became clear to them that Shakuni's intent was not merely to organize a grand spectacle, but to subtly erode Hastinapura's perceived superiority. By encouraging widespread participation and cultivating skilled warriors across the continent, Shakuni aimed to demonstrate that Hastinapura's princes held no inherent advantage over others. This leveling of the playing field could shift the perception of Hastinapura from being a dominant power to merely an equal among kingdoms. Such an environment, they realized, could also sow seeds of rivalry and unrest. Though Bhishma and Vidura saw through Shakuni's machinations, they were left in a quandary. Stopping the grand event outright was not an option, as Dhritarashtra, influenced by Shakuni, would dismiss their concerns without consideration. However, they understood that the only factor that could continue to set the Kuru princes apart was their access to knowledge of divyastras, the divine weapons, the rare and extraordinary astras known only to a select few across the world, including Bhishma. While the warriors training for the event might excel in conventional skills, the mastery of divine weaponry could elevate the Kuru princes above all others. Recognizing the urgency of the matter, Bhishma resolved to monitor and control the dissemination of this sacred knowledge. He wanted to ensure that no one outside the royal princes of Hastinapura gained access to divyastras. By keeping this knowledge confined within the palace walls, Bhishma intended to create an unassailable edge for the princes, one that would distinguish them from even the most skilled warriors training for the grand event. To safeguard its secrecy and prevent others from learning these celestial techniques, Bhishma instructed Vidura to identify all individuals capable of wielding or teaching divine weapons across the continent. Without delay, Vidura embarked on his mission to identify the masters of these celestial weapons. Bhishma's unyielding focus was clear: to protect the sanctity of Hastinapura's power and to ensure that no external force could rise to challenge its sovereignty. This strategy was not just about countering Shakuni's plans, but about reinforcing Hastinapura's position as the unchallenged epicenter of strength and wisdom in the entire Jambu Dwipa. As the eldest among the 100 sons of King Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana naturally assumed the role of leader among his brothers. His dominance, while evident in every aspect of their lives, was not oppressive. Rather, it was accompanied by a friendly and kind demeanor that endeared him to his siblings. The Kauravas, despite their vast number, shared a bond of unity with little room for jealousy or rivalry. Though some, like Vikarna, occasionally engaged in philosophical debates that diverged from Duryodhana's perspective, these differences were confined to intellectual discussions and never fractured their familial camaraderie. In the rigorous training sessions under Kripacharya's guidance, Duryodhana's physical prowess shone brightly. He consistently outmatched his brothers in wrestling duels and mace-fighting contests, emerging as the undisputed champion among them. While Dushasana provided him with stiff competition on occasion, even he could never best Duryodhana. Yet, this dominance never bred resentment among the brothers. Instead, they respected him deeply and saw him as their natural leader and the future king of Hastinapura. Duryodhana's love for his younger sister, Dushala, was boundless. His affection and care for her were evident in every interaction, and he often took it upon himself to ensure her happiness and well-being. Dhritarashtra, too, favored Duryodhana among all his children, recognizing in him the qualities of a leader. The king often observed with pride how effortlessly Duryodhana commanded the respect and loyalty of his siblings, a trait he deemed essential for the future ruler of Hastinapura. Occasionally, Kripacharya invited students from other training ashrams to test their skills against the Kauravas, particularly Duryodhana and Dushasana. Despite these external challenges, none in their age group could defeat Duryodhana in wrestling or mace fighting. His fame as a formidable wrestler and a master of mace combat spread across the kingdom, and his name became synonymous with strength and skill in every training ashram in Hastinapura. When Kripacharya accompanied the Kauravas to other ashrams for competitions, Duryodhana's reputation often preceded him. Among the disciples of these training centers, his name was synonymous with unparalleled skill. His exploits, celebrated widely across Hastinapura, had earned him a reverence that extended beyond the royal palace. The young trainees at these ashrams not only respected Duryodhana, but also looked up to him with a sense of awe. Duryodhana, in turn, relished this admiration. He felt a deep sense of pride in the recognition he received, finding satisfaction in the way others regarded him as a formidable and dominant warrior. The nervous glances of disciples reluctant to face him in wrestling matches or mace duels only added to his sense of superiority. For Duryodhana, this fear and respect were a validation of his hard-earned reputation and an affirmation of his natural dominance. He carried himself with a demeanor that commanded attention, exuding confidence and strength that left an indelible impression on those who encountered him. The respect and even trepidation of his peers in these competitions fed his growing sense of self-worth, reinforcing his belief that he was destined for greatness, not just among the Kauravas, but in the wider realm of Hastinapura and beyond. Shakuni, who often spent time with Duryodhana, grew genuinely fond of him despite his personal intentions against Hastinapura. The young prince's dominant yet amicable behavior left a lasting impression on Shakuni, who habitually addressed him as the future king of Hastinapura. This title, bestowed with genuine affection, was echoed by the other Kauravas, further solidifying Duryodhana's role as their leader. Duryodhana embraced this recognition, conducting himself with the dignity and authority befitting a crown prince. Gandhari, too, held a special place in her heart for Duryodhana. As her eldest son, he was the embodiment of her dreams and aspirations for the Kuru dynasty. She shared his ambition and often envisioned the day when her beloved son would ascend the throne as the emperor of the Kuru kingdom. Duryodhana's strength, charisma, and leadership qualities made him the pride of his family and the focal point of their hopes for Hastinapura's future. Kunti, now burdened with the immense responsibility of raising 5 young sons, the heirs of the late King Pandu, felt the weight of loneliness pressing upon her heart. Having spent years in the serene company of Madri and Pandu, their sudden and tragic absence left her engulfed in sorrow and longing. The emptiness of their absence was a constant reminder of her loss and the role she now had to shoulder for the future of the Kuru dynasty. The sages and rishis of Shatashringa, understanding the gravity of the situation and Kunti's fragile emotional state, convened among themselves. They resolved to accompany Kunti and the Pandavas back to Hastinapura, carrying with them the sacred astikas, the remains of Pandu and Madri. This decision, they believed, would allow the Pandavas to claim their rightful place in the kingdom and ensure their protection. During the preparations for their journey, Kunti sat with her eldest son, Yudhishthira, For the first time, she shared with him the untold stories of his father, Pandu. She recounted how Pandu was born through the ancient practice of niyoga, with the blessings of sage Veda Vyasa. She spoke of the conflicts that arose between Pandu and his elder brother, Dhritarashtra, and how Pandu ascended the throne of Hastinapura with the unwavering support of Vidura and Bhishma. Kunthi explained Pandu's strategic brilliance during the time of Jarasanda's growing dominance, highlighting his swift and decisive victories over neighboring kingdoms, which curbed the ambitions of the powerful Emperor Jarasandha. As Kunthi continued, she revealed the tragic events that led to Pandu's curse by the sage Kindama, and how it compelled him to renounce the throne and live a life of asceticism in the forests. She painted a vivid picture of his struggles, wisdom, and the profound lessons he instilled in his family during their years in exile. Yudhisthira listened intently, his understanding of his father deepening with every word. For the first time, he grasped the complex web of family politics within the Kuru dynasty and the challenges that awaited them upon their return to Hastinapura. Kunthi, with a firm resolve, reassured her son that the kingdom of Hastinapura rightfully belonged to them as Pandu's heirs. She encouraged Yudhisthira to embrace the responsibility of his lineage and prepare for the trials ahead. Yudhisthira, wise beyond his years, absorbed his mother's words and began to see the path laid before him with clarity and determination. The sages, with their divine wisdom and gentle guidance, led the group as they set out on their journey to Hastinapura. Kunthi, despite her lingering grief, walked with strength, holding the hands of her younger sons as they embarked on a new chapter of their lives. The Pandavas, each carrying the legacy of their father, moved forward with a sense of purpose. Together, with the sages and Kunthi's unwavering love, they began their journey from the tranquil forests of Shatashringa to the grand gates of Hastinapura, unaware of the destiny that awaited them in the corridors of power and the battlegrounds of history. Drona, having established his own ashram, began his teaching journey with his first and most devoted disciple, his son, Ashwathama. Over the years, Drona's unparalleled expertise in Dhanurveda, the science of warfare, began to draw students from far and wide. His method of teaching was unique. While his lessons were simple to understand, the practice required intense discipline and perseverance. This blend of accessibility and rigor made Drona a sought-after guru, even outshining many seasoned teachers with decades of experience. As word of his exceptional teaching spread, kings from surrounding kingdoms recognized Drona's ability to mold ordinary students into extraordinary warriors. They began sending their princes to learn under his tutelage, welcoming each aspiring warrior, regardless of their background. Drona's ashram grew in size and stature, becoming a hub of martial training. His reputation as a guru of unmatched skill cemented his position as one of the most revered teachers in the art of warfare. Among his numerous disciples, Ashwathama stood apart. As the son of Drona, Ashwathama was not only his father's pride, but also his most accomplished student. A natural in archery and swordsmanship, Ashwathama excelled in dual combat and proved equally adept at taking on multiple opponents simultaneously. Fearless and fiercely determined, his bravery was further amplified by the Shivamani, a divine gem embedded on his head from birth. a blessing from Lord Shiva that made him invincible. This divine boon gave him unparalleled confidence in his abilities. Deeply devoted to his father, Ashwathama viewed Drona as both a guide and a figure of profound inspiration. He carried immense pride in his lineage and his father's growing legacy, aspiring to embody the same greatness. His insatiable thirst for knowledge drove him to learn more and more, often surpassing his peers in skill and dedication. Despite his growing number of disciples, Drona remained cautious in his teachings. While he possessed the wisdom to impart the knowledge of divyastras, the celestial weapons of immense power, he refrained from teaching them. He believed that mastery of these divine weapons required not just skill, but also emotional maturity, unwavering focus, and a profound sense of responsibility. Drona saw flashes of talent in his students, but found none with the complete temperament or clarity of mind necessary to wield such destructive power. This restraint underscored Drona's wisdom, as he understood the devastating potential of the divyastras in the wrong hands. His careful approach ensured that his ashram became not only a place of training, but also a sanctuary for cultivating discipline, ethics, and the deeper understanding of warfare beyond mere combat skills. Vidura, through his network of secret agents, meticulously gathered intelligence on individuals possessing knowledge of divyastras. After compiling the information, Vidura approached Bhishma with a report. He revealed that while many powerful sages who had mastered these celestial weapons were now immersed in penance, including Bhishma's own revered guru, Parashurama, there was one notable exception, a man who not only possessed this rare knowledge, but had also become a guru. This man was none other than Drona. Vidura elaborated, informing Bhishma that Drona, who had trained under Parashurama himself, was now teaching the art of warfare to anyone who approached him, regardless of their background. This included teaching principles of Veda to students from various kingdoms. Vidura also revealed an important connection. Drona was the brother-in-law of Kripacharya. Bhishma, vigilant about protecting the supremacy of the Kuru dynasty against the cunning plan of Shakuni, immediately recognized the implications of this revelation. If the knowledge of divyastras were to spread beyond the Kuru princes, it could diminish their unique position of power and create unforeseen challenges to Hastinapura's dominance. Bhishma, resolute in his belief that only the Kuru princes should wield such extraordinary power, decided to act. He summoned Kripacharya and instructed him to invite Drona and his family to Hastinapura. The purpose of this invitation was clear: to bring Drona's unparalleled skills into the royal fold and ensure that the secrets of divyastras remained exclusive to the Kuru princes. Bhishma's decision marked a pivotal moment, setting in motion events that would shape the future of the Kuru dynasty. The sages, Kunthi and the Pandavas, reached the Vardhamana kingdom within the Kuru Jangala territory, the nearest settlement on their journey to Hastinapura from Shatashringa. Upon their arrival, the devastating news of King Pandu's demise was conveyed to the ruler of Vardhamana. This news, like wildfire, spread throughout the kingdom. Pandu, known as a virtuous king and the hero who saved the Kuru kingdom from Jarasandha, had earned the love and respect of his people. Thousands of citizens, upon hearing of his untimely death, gathered in shock and mourning. A message was swiftly dispatched to Hastinapura. Upon receiving the message, Vidura, known for his composed demeanor, was visibly shaken. The news reverberated through the palace like a thunderclap. Bhishma, along with Satyavati, Ambika and Ambalika, was struck with grief. Ambalika, Pandu's mother, was particularly inconsolable, lamenting that she had been denied even the final sight of her beloved son. Even Dhritarashtra and Shakuni were taken aback by the sudden tragedy. Without delay, a delegation comprising Bhishma, Vidura, Satyavati, Ambika, Ambalika, and Dhritarashtra departed for Vardhamana to pay their respects. The Kuru princes, along with Kripacharya and Shakuni, remained in Hastinapura. When they arrived in Vardhamana, the rishis recounted the full tale of Pandu's life in Shotashringa, the divine birth of the Pandavas, and the circumstances leading to his tragic demise. They explained how Madri, overcome by grief and guilt, chose to follow her husband into death, performing sati to join him in the afterlife. The sight of Pandu's astikas in the care of the rishis broke Ambalika's spirit. She wailed inconsolably, her cries resonating with the grief of a mother who could not bid her son a final farewell. Bhishma, though burdened by his own sorrow, maintained his composure and assured Kunti and the Pandavas of his protection and guidance. He vowed to uphold Pandu's legacy and see to the well-being of his children. Dhritarashtra, taking possession of the astikas, entrusted Vidura with organizing the grand rituals for Pandu and Madri. A procession was arranged with the astikas carried in a beautifully adorned palanquin, flanked by hundreds of soldiers and followed by thousands of mourning citizens. Bhishma, Vidura, the Pandavas, and Kunti walked solemnly behind the palanquin as it passed through the streets, an ocean of grief surrounding them. The astikas were taken to the sacred Ganga river, where Yudhisthira, as the eldest son, performed the last rites. With trembling hands and a heavy heart, he merged the ashes into the flowing waters, bidding his father and Madri a final farewell. The kingdom mourned collectively as food donations were organized on a massive scale across the land. Every citizen, regardless of status, received food in honor of Pandu and Madri, an act reflecting the immense respect they had garnered throughout their lives. The delegation observed an 11-day mourning period in Vardhamana, honoring the passing of Pandu and Madri. After the period of mourning concluded, on the 12th day, they prepared to journey back to Hastinapura. In Hastinapura, Shakuni received unsettling news that left him both shocked and impressed. The ever-perceptive Bhishma and the astute Vidura had seen through his carefully laid plans. They had begun identifying individuals with the knowledge of divyastras and were actively trying to bring them to Hastinapura. Shakuni was startled at how accurately they had discerned his strategy and felt a pang of frustration at being outmaneuvered so swiftly. As he pondered his next move, Shakuni's gaze shifted to the Kauravas practicing their wrestling skills in the courtyard. Duryodhana, ever dominant, was easily defeating his brothers. However, his bout with Dushasana was more intense, with both brothers displaying equal strength and skill. Eventually, Duryodhana overpowered Dushasana, pinning him down decisively. As the training session unfolded, a commotion arose at the gates of the courtyard. Bhishma, Vidura, and a group of sages entered, followed by a procession of soldiers and the Pandavas. The attention of everyone in the arena shifted toward the new arrivals. Shakuni's eyes, along with those of the Kauravas, immediately fell on one figure in particular. Amid the group stood a towering young boy, his frame unusually large and muscular for his age. This was Vrikodara, the second son of Pandu, better known as Bhima, due to his immense strength. The Kauravas murmured among themselves, many marveling at Bhima's imposing physique. Even Duryodhana couldn't take his eyes off the Pandava. For the first time, he felt a flicker of inferiority. The sheer presence of Bhima, his powerful build, and his confident stride stirred unease in Duryodhana's heart. Some of the Kauravas whispered to one another, praising Bhima's look and speculating about his abilities. Duryodhana, already unsettled, felt a pang of resentment as he heard his brothers admire someone else, a feeling he had never experienced before. Shakuni, watching the interaction, noted Duryodhana's discomfort. A subtle smile played on his lips as his mind began weaving new strategies. The arrival of the Pandavas was already creating ripples in Hastinapura, and Shakuni was determined to use this changing tide to his advantage. Vyasa arrived in Hastinapura to console Kunti for her immense loss. With his calming presence, he spoke to Yudhishthira and his brothers, offering his blessings for their future. He assured them of the virtues and qualities they possessed, especially Yudhishthira, whom Vyasa described as an embodiment of righteousness and an ideal candidate to lead Hastinapura as its future king. Vyasa also spoke privately with Bhishma, praising Yudhishthira's noble character, wisdom, and sense of justice, qualities that made him a perfect fit to inherit the throne. Bhishma, deeply moved by Vyasa's words, silently resolved to guide and protect the Pandavas in their journey ahead. Later, Vyasa spoke to Satyavati, revealing his concerns about the changing times. He explained that the natural order was shifting and the world was becoming more dangerous. People would soon be consumed by jealousy, greed, and cruelty. Sensing this, Vyasa advised Satyavati to renounce her worldly ties and retreat to the forest to live the rest of her life in penance and peace. Satyavati shared this decision with Ambika and Ambalika. She asked Ambika, as the mother of Dhritarashtra, to stay behind since her son was the reigning king, but Ambika insisted on accompanying her mother-in-law. Ambalika, too, chose to leave the palace life behind and follow them. Together, the three women left for the forest to spend their remaining days in meditation and spiritual solitude. The Pandavas and Kauravas continued to bond through play. Whether it was racing, treasure hunting, or other games, the Pandavas often displayed their superiority, with Bhima's immense strength standing out the most. Naturally playful and mischievous, Bhima frequently used his strength to dominate the Kauravas in their games. When the Kauravas climbed trees to gather fruits, Bhima would dash toward the tree and shake it with such force that the Kauravas would tumble down. Amused, Bhima would laugh heartily at their misfortune. The Kauravas, stunned by his incredible strength, dared not show their anger. In other games, Bhima would grab their legs, dragging them around as if they were toys, or catch two of them by their hair and knock their heads together in jest. Sometimes he would dunk them into water, holding them just long enough to frighten them before pulling them out. Despite these antics being in a playful spirit, the Kauravas were terrified of Bhima. Even when they suffered under his pranks, they were too afraid to complain to Kripacharya. Duryodhana silently observed everything. He deeply resented Bhima's strength and dominance. Though he witnessed Bhima's bullying, he refrained from intervening, worried that if Bhima turned his wrath on him, he might lose the respect of his brothers. But deep inside, Duryodhana's anger and frustration festered. While he outwardly maintained his composure, his hatred for Bhima grew stronger with every passing day. Resentment took root in his heart, and he began harboring dark thoughts. Duryodhana, no longer willing to endure Bhima's superiority, resolved to kill him whenever the opportunity arose. This marked the beginning of a bitter rivalry destined to shape the future of the Kuru dynasty. Duryodhana, harboring a plan in his mind, proposed a Jalavihara, recreational outing by the river for a couple of days. He selected a picturesque location near the serene Pramanakoti River, a spot not too far from the palace. After finalizing the plan, Duryodhana informed his father, King Dhritarashtra, of the arrangement. The king approved the idea and immediately made provisions to ensure the comfort and safety of the princes, took extensive measures to ensure the Jalavihara by the Pramanakoti River would be a flawless and enjoyable experience. He commanded his servants to meticulously clear the area, cutting down overgrown trees and underbrush to create an open, inviting space suitable for royal recreation. Temporary shelters were constructed using fine wood and decorative fabrics to provide shade and comfort for the princes and their attendants. The ground was leveled with soft grass to create a pleasant seating area, while pathways were made smooth for easy movement. To address any potential threats from wildlife, Dhritarashtra deployed a battalion of skilled soldiers to thoroughly survey the surrounding forest. The soldiers hunted down any wild animals that could pose a danger, ensuring the safety of the royal party. Traps were set in deeper parts of the forest to capture or deter any wandering predators, and scouts were stationed to maintain vigilance throughout the event. In addition to these precautions, Dhritarashtra arranged for a contingent of guards to remain stationed at the site, ensuring the princes' security during their stay. He also ordered the royal cooks to prepare a lavish feast for the outing, complete with delicacies and seasonal fruits to enhance the experience. Fresh water from the river was filtered and stored in large containers for drinking, and arrangements were made for entertainment, including musicians and performers to keep the young princes engaged. Dhritarashtra also instructed his servants to ensure ample supplies of scented oils and herbal concoctions to ward off insects. The entire site was transformed into a royal retreat, reflecting the king's dedication to his son's enjoyment and safety. Every detail was carefully managed, leaving no room for inconvenience. Once preparations were complete, Duryodhana extended an invitation to Yudhisthira, informing him of the upcoming Jalavihara and warmly inviting the Pandavas to join. Yudhishthira, appreciating the gesture, sought his mother Kunti's permission. Kunti, understanding the importance of maintaining camaraderie between the cousins, gave her approval. With her blessing, Yudhishthira agreed to join the Kauravas for the outing, marking the beginning of a seemingly harmonious gathering. Duryodhana approached a Rasayana Shastra expert, a skilled alchemist in the kingdom, with a dark and ominous request. Commanding an air of authority, he demanded the most potent poison the alchemist could create. The alchemist, alarmed by the nature of this demand, hesitated and cautiously inquired about its purpose. Duryodhana, his tone sharp and unwavering, dismissed the question and ordered the alchemist to obey his command without further inquiry. Terrified by the implications, the alchemist explained that crafting the most lethal poison would require several days. But Duryodhana, growing impatient, insisted on something immediate. He declared that the poison needed only to be potent enough to kill a man, and demanded it be ready by the next day. The alchemist, deeply fearful of the consequences, tried to express his concerns, particularly about the risk of exposure and punishment. Sensing the alchemist's hesitation, Duryodhana leaned in with a chilling warning. He assured the alchemist that no harm would come to him if he remained silent, but if the secret leaked, Duryodhana would personally ensure his demise and make his body disappear without a trace. The alchemist, trembling with fear, reluctantly complied and handed over a vial of deadly poison. He explained that while this concoction was sufficient to kill a man, the truly lethal mixture Duryodhana initially requested would require more time. Duryodhana, satisfied for the moment, took the vial as the Jalavihara was scheduled for the next day. His eyes gleamed with determination as he concealed the poison, his mind set on whatever sinister plans he had conceived. The Pandavas and Kauravas enjoyed their time at the Jalavihara with great enthusiasm, turning the serene riverside into a lively playground. The princes indulged in water games, splashing and racing each other in the cool waters of the Pramanakoti River. The trees lining the riverbank were transformed into play areas, as the young princes climbed them and swung into the river, laughing and cheering. To add to the excitement, Yudhishthira organized a treasure hunt along the riverbank. Items were hidden cleverly, and the princes formed teams to find them. Duryodhana, in his usual competitive spirit, tried to outsmart everyone, but he grew frustrated when Bhima or Arjuna effortlessly outperformed him, earning laughs and cheers from the others. The royal cooks prepared a grand feast for the princes, serving a variety of dishes. Bhima astonished everyone with his insatiable appetite, consuming an amount of food that left even the cooks bewildered. The other princes looked on in amazement, never having seen anyone eat so much. In another display of strength, Duryodhana lifted a massive boulder and challenged the others to match his feat. While many of the strong Kauravas struggled, Bhima stepped forward, laughing at the challenge. He not only lifted the boulder with ease, but hurled it far into the distance, surpassing Duryodhana's effort. The Kauravas were stunned, and though Duryodhana felt deeply humiliated, he masked his feelings and maintained a sportive demeanor outwardly. Later, Yudhisthira arranged a storytelling session where the princes narrated heroic tales of gods and warriors. Yudhisthira shared the story of their father, Pandu, recounting his bravery in battle and the sacrifices he made for the kingdom. When it was Duryodhana's turn, he spun a tale about his father, Dhritarashtra, claiming that he saved the kingdom while Pandu fled to the forest, afraid of a curse from his misdeeds. This remark enraged Bhima and the Pandavas. Bhima, furious, declared to Yudhisthira that he would silence Duryodhana instantly. But Yudhisthira intervened, calming Bhima and urging him to let it go. As night fell, the princes gathered around a bonfire. Entertainers performed songs and dances, bringing joy and laughter to the group. Even the younger Kauravas joined in, their cheerful spirits making the evening lively and memorable. Later in the night, Duryodhana approached Bhima with a special dish, claiming it was prepared especially for him. Bhima, being a food enthusiast, eagerly tasted the dish and found it delicious. Unaware that Duryodhana had mixed poison into the food, Bhima finished the entire dish without hesitation. Satisfied with his plan, Duryodhana watched as everyone retired for the night. In the middle of the night, Duryodhana quietly woke up and went to Bhima, who was deep asleep. His mind raced as he prepared to execute his sinister plan. Initially, he considered using ropes to bind Bhima, but his calculating mind warned him of the risks. That if Bhima's body is found later, the marks of the ropes will reveal that he was tied, and Bhishma or Vidura will undoubtedly question who bound him. That could lead straight to him, which is too risky. Another thought crossed his mind, throwing Bhima into the water without binding him, but the idea sent a chill down his spine. If Bhima wakes up in the water, his unmatched strength will allow him to swim back to shore. And worse, he will come after Duryodhana with a vengeance, and no one, not even all the Kauravas together, will be able to stop him. Determined to leave no chance for error, Duryodhana devised a plan to avoid suspicion and ensure Bhima's demise. He went to the riverbank and collected strong, flexible creepers. Returning silently, he used the creepers to tie Bhima securely, wrapping his arms and legs tightly, as these will leave no telltale marks. And even if Bhima regains consciousness, he won't be able to swim or free himself. With his gruesome plan in motion, Duryodhana carried Bhima and heaved him into the flowing river. As Bhima's bound form disappeared into the dark currents, Duryodhana felt a wave of relief and triumph wash over him. In his mind, he had finally rid himself of his greatest rival and obstacle to supremacy. The next morning, Yudhishthira woke up and noticed that Bhima was not in his tent. Initially unconcerned, he assumed Bhima had wandered off nearby and would return soon. However, as the day progressed and Bhima did not return even by lunchtime, unease began to settle in. Feeling something was amiss, Yudhishthira began to inquire about his brother's whereabouts. He questioned the other Pandavas, the Kauravas, and even the guards, but no one claimed to have seen Bhima. Duryodhana, masking his true emotions, downplayed the situation and reassured everyone that Bhima's strength and resilience would keep him safe. The Kauravas continued their day of Jalavihara with joy and enthusiasm, much like the previous day. In contrast, the Pandavas spent most of their time searching the nearby forest for any trace of Bhima, though their efforts were in vain. By evening, when the princes returned to the palace, Yudhishthira rushed to Kunthi, hoping Bhima had returned home. But Kunthi, seeing her son's troubled face, told him that Bhima had not come back, and her maternal instincts were instantly filled with worry. Alarmed by Bhima's disappearance, Kunti sought Vidura's counsel. Vidura, known for his sharp intuition, immediately began piecing together the clues. After speaking with Yudhishthira, he learned about the incident at the Jalavihara, where Bhima had easily outperformed Duryodhana in physical feats, particularly when he had humiliated Duryodhana by lifting and throwing a massive boulder with ease. Vidura sensed that something more sinister might have occurred. To address the situation, he dispatched search parties of soldiers in all directions, ordering them to leave no stone unturned in their search for Bhima. Meanwhile, Shakuni, who had been observing the situation with suspicion, noticed Duryodhana's uneasy demeanor. Catching Duryodhana alone, Shakuni approached him with a knowing look and began speaking in his smooth, manipulative tone. He subtly brought up Bhima's absence, gauging Duryodhana's reaction. Though Duryodhana initially feigned ignorance, Shakuni cleverly shifted the conversation, speaking of the broader dynamics within the Kuru dynasty. He pointed out how Yudhishthira's arrival had altered the future of Hastinapura, pushing Duryodhana aside as the rightful heir to the throne. Shakuni expressed his disdain for the injustices done to Dhritarashtra during the crowning of Pandu as king, calling it an unfair decision. He lamented that history was repeating itself, with Yudhishthira being prepared to take the throne over Duryodhana. These words struck a chord with Duryodhana, who felt a strange sense of relief hearing Shakuni's support for his claim to the throne. Emboldened by Shakuni's apparent allegiance, Duryodhana began to open up. Without explicitly admitting to poisoning Bhima, he hinted that he had taken steps to eliminate the greatest obstacle to his dominance. He stated that as long as Bhima stood by Yudhishthira's side, Duryodhana's path to the throne would remain blocked. Therefore, removing Bhima was essential to weakening Yudhishthira's position. Shakuni, understanding Duryodhana's implication, did not press for details. Instead, he praised Duryodhana's intelligence. He regarded Duryodhana with a look of approval. He saw the young prince's actions as a reflection of ambition and resolve. Shakuni affirmed that Duryodhana was beginning to think like a true king, a ruler unafraid to make bold decisions for his future. Shakuni resolved to strengthen this burgeoning confidence, assuring himself that he would stand by Duryodhana's side, as he had always done for Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana, who had wrestled with guilt over his actions until now, suddenly felt vindicated. Shakuni's words lifted the weight of doubt from his heart, replacing it with a sense of pride. For the first time, he saw Shakuni as more than an uncle. He saw him as an invaluable ally, someone who would help him secure his destiny. Convinced that his actions were not only necessary but also right, Duryodhana's resolve grew stronger, and his bond with Shakuni deepened. While the Kuru princes were on their holiday, Kripacharya diligently focused on the task entrusted to him by Bhishma. Determined to fulfill his responsibility, he visited Drona's ashram. Upon arrival, Kripacharya felt a sense of pride seeing Drona thriving, having seemingly found purpose in his life. He also noticed a lingering dissatisfaction in his demeanor, a subtle indication that something within Drona remained unsettled. Curious and concerned, Kripacharya inquired whether Drona had taught the knowledge of Divyastras to his son, Ashwathama. Drona admitted that he had not yet shared this sacred and destructive knowledge with anyone, not even Ashwathama. He explained that he was cautious about bestowing such immense power, uncertain if even princes or devoted students could handle the weight of such responsibility. Relieved by Drona's prudence, Kripacharya understood the wisdom behind his hesitation. Kripacharya then shared the purpose of his visit, informing Drona that Bhishma himself had extended an invitation for him to come to Hastinapura. He spoke of Drona's growing renown, his extraordinary skills now being discussed across kingdoms. But Drona hesitated. He recalled previously declining a similar offer from Kripacharya and expressed his reluctance to reverse that decision. Krupi intervened with calm reasoning. She reminded Drona that this was not a matter of him approaching the royal family, but rather Bhishma, a figure of unparalleled authority, inviting him personally. She pointed out that accepting the invitation was not a compromise, but an honor. Her words resonated deeply, and Drona, feeling reassured, agreed to travel to Hastinapura. Drona, accompanied by Ashwathama and Krupi, soon traveled to the capital along with Kripacharya. Kripacharya informed them of the tense atmosphere within the royal family. One of the princes, Bhima, was reported missing, causing distress among the royal members. Kripacharya, understanding the gravity of the situation, arranged for Drona and his family to stay at his home until the turmoil subsided. He assured Drona that he would introduce him to Bhishma once the situation was resolved. Despite the underlying tension in Hastinapura, Drona felt a strange sense of peace. Though unaware of the full extent of what awaited him, he believed he was on the right path, moving closer to fulfilling a destiny he had long sought to understand. Bhima, submerged in the depths of the river, was bitten by venomous snakes. Surprisingly, the poison of these snakes counteracted the deadly poison in his body, neutralizing its effects. Slowly, Bhima regained consciousness, his senses stirring to life. As his mind cleared, he broke free of the creepers that bound his hands and legs with sheer strength. Fully awake, Bhima was both terrified and bewildered by his surroundings. The place he found himself in was unlike anything he had ever seen. Dark yet strangely illuminated, he felt as though he was still underwater, yet he could breathe effortlessly, and the gravity seemed lighter, making his movements feel surreal. The environment was otherworldly, leaving him unsure if he was in reality or a dream. Before he could make sense of the situation, he was surrounded by enormous, venomous snakes, creatures far larger and more fearsome than any he had encountered on Earth. The snakes, moving with menacing intent, began closing in on him. Though fear gripped him initially, Bhima resolved to fight back. He knew escape was impossible, so he decided to kill as many snakes as he could before their venom took effect. Gripping the snakes with his bare hands, Bhima fought ferociously, slamming them to the ground and tearing them apart. The sheer force of his resistance was astounding. Just as he was battling with unrelenting determination, a commanding voice echoed, ordering him to stop. It was Vasuki, the mighty king of the Nagas. Vasuki, impressed by Bhima's extraordinary courage and indomitable spirit, approached him. The king inquired about his identity, and Bhima introduced himself. Standing beside Vasuki was a sage named Aryaka, who revealed himself to be Bhima's maternal great-grandfather, the father of Surasena, Kunti's biological father. Aryaka spoke to Bhima with warmth and affection, marveling at his valor, and explained that he was now in Nagaloka, an underwater realm. Vasuki, still impressed by the scene, remarked on Bhima's bravery. He explained that many would have perished from sheer fright at the sight of such deadly snakes. Yet Bhima not only faced them but fought them with unmatched fearlessness. As a reward for his courage and strength, Vasuki presented Bhima with a special elixir, a divine liquid that he claimed would grant him the immense physical power of 1,000 elephants. Without hesitation, Bhima drank the liquid from the pot, his body surging with energy as he emptied it in a single gulp. One pot was not enough for the voracious Bhima. He drank 8 pots of the divine elixir continuously. Overwhelmed by its potency, his body entered a deep sleep, his mind and muscles resting as the divine strength coursed through him. The tension in Hastinapura had grown unbearable as the search for Bhima continued relentlessly. Soldiers were dispatched in every direction, and Vidura sent professional swimmers to search the Pramanakoti River, hoping to find some trace of the missing prince. Dhritarashtra and Bhishma also issued orders to intensify the search efforts, leaving no stone unturned. Meanwhile, Duryodhana, though outwardly appearing concerned, was secretly relieved, believing that Bhima was gone for good. His heart swelled with satisfaction as days passed without any news of Bhima. Kunti was in deep anguish, unable to find peace since her son's disappearance. Despite Gandhari's attempts to console her, Kunti's pain remained insurmountable. Every day, Yudhishthira and his brothers would leave at dawn to search for Bhima and return at night, exhausted and disheartened. The palace's atmosphere was heavy with worry and despair. On the 9th day, just as hope began to wane, Bhima returned to Hastinapura. He walked into the palace with a smile on his face, his body free of any wounds, and headed straight to Kunti and his brothers. Kunti, overwhelmed with joy, embraced him tightly, her tears of sorrow replaced by those of relief and happiness. The Pandavas were equally elated, and for a moment, the tension in the palace dissolved into joy. Bhima recounted his extraordinary experience to his mother and brothers. He spoke of how he had been swept into a mysterious realm, bitten by snakes whose venom neutralized the poison in his body. He described his encounter with Vasuki, the king of the Nagas, and Aryaka, Kunti's great-grandfather, who had treated him with warmth and affection. He shared how Vasuki had rewarded his courage with a divine liquid that granted him the strength of 10,000 elephants and another potion that rendered him immune to poison. Though Kunti and the Pandavas were astonished by the unnatural events Bhima described, their relief at his safe return overshadowed their doubts. As they celebrated, Yuyutsu, the son of Dhritarashtra and maidservant Sulabha, approached them. With a heavy heart, he revealed a dark secret. He had witnessed Duryodhana carrying Bhima in the dead of night. Yuyutsu admitted he was too terrified to intervene, but was certain that Duryodhana was responsible for the attempt on Bhima's life. Hearing this, Bhima's expression darkened with rage. He recalled how Duryodhana had given him a special dish during the Jalavihara, and the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Enraged, Bhima declared his intent to confront and kill Duryodhana immediately. Kunti, deeply saddened by the cruelty shown to her son, pleaded with Bhima to restrain himself. Yudhishthira, ever the voice of reason, also urged Bhima to exercise patience and consult Vidura first. Vidura listened intently to the account of events and advised them to keep the matter a secret. He explained that with Dhritarashtra's favoritism toward Duryodhana and the Pandavas' precarious position in the royal family, accusing Duryodhana without concrete evidence could backfire. The only witness, Yuyutsu, being the son of a maid, could easily be discredited. Vidura warned that such accusations might lead to severe consequences, including the exile of the Pandavas. Though still furious, Bhima understood the gravity of Vidura's advice and reluctantly agreed to remain silent. Duryodhana, upon seeing Bhima alive and well, was struck with shock and disbelief. His heart, which had been soaring with joy for the past 9 days, shattered into pieces. Bhima, when questioned by Bhishma about his absence, offered a simple explanation. He had fallen into the river, been swept away, and regained consciousness far away. He claimed it took him days to return. Bhishma, relieved at Bhima's safe return, arranged for Brahmins to perform a yagna to ward off any evil influences on him. Shakuni, in his characteristic subtle manner, explained to Duryodhana that while all the Kauravas were born as a blessing from Lord Shiva, the Pandavas were unique. They were hybrids born to a human mother through the intervention of the Devas, the highest level of consciousness in the universe. This divine origin naturally made the Pandavas superior to even the best of humans on earth. Shakuni emphasized that it would be impossible to bring them down through physical strength alone. Defeating them would require exceptional cleverness and strategic thinking. Duryodhana doubted Shakuni's words and questioned whether it was even possible to overcome the Pandavas through cunning and strategy. Shakuni, with a knowing smile, responded that the destruction of a person depends on how strong the desire is, held by the one who seeks to destroy him. This conversation struck a chord with Duryodhana, and he began to grasp the deeper meaning behind Shakuni's words. Feeling reassured by Shakuni's guidance, Duryodhana opened up to him completely, fully trusting him as the ally he needed to achieve his ambitions. A few days later, Duryodhana, still upset about Bhima, decided to try poisoning him again. He took the strongest poison he had requested from the alchemist. However, Yuyutsu overheard Duryodhana's plan and quickly warned Bhima. Bhima, aware of the plot, decided to face it directly. He approached Duryodhana and asked for the special dish he had been served earlier, saying he enjoyed it. Duryodhana, thinking Bhima was foolish, happily prepared the dish again, adding a deadly dose of poison. Bhima ate it in front of him without hesitation, finishing the dish effortlessly. Duryodhana eagerly waited for the poison to work, but nothing happened. Confused and frustrated, he thought the alchemist had tricked him. To test the poison, he gave it to a horse, which died instantly. Duryodhana was shocked and couldn't understand why it didn't affect Bhima, while Bhima quietly enjoyed watching his frustration. Meanwhile, Drona wandered through the streets of Hastinapura, unsure if leaving his ashram and coming to the city was the right decision. As he neared the palace, he heard that Bhima, who had been missing, had returned. He thought about entering the palace but hesitated, remembering how Draupadi had insulted him in a royal court. Choosing to avoid the palace, he walked around and soon came across the Kuru princes playing a game called Gilli Danda. One of the princes ran to Drona, asking for help. Their gilly had fallen into a deep well, and they couldn't retrieve it. Drona went with them and saw the situation. He questioned why, as princes, they lacked the skills to solve such a simple problem. To show them his abilities, Drona threw his ring into the well as well and told them he would retrieve both. Chanting a mantra, he shot an arrow into the well. Moments later, the arrow emerged with both the gilly and the ring. The princes were amazed by Drona's incredible skill. Impressed, they asked Drona who he was and how they could thank him. Drona told them to inform Bhishma about what had happened and walked away. The princes reported the incident to Bhishma, describing the Brahmin with unmatched divine archery skills. Bhishma immediately realized it was Drona. Kripacharya, who had been hosting Drona, admitted he had delayed introducing him to the court because of the tense situation caused by Bhima's disappearance. With the crisis resolved, Bhishma decided it was the perfect time to formally welcome Drona and appoint him as the royal guru, a plan he had intended to counter Shakuni's conspiracy. Bhishma, accompanied by Kripacharya, personally visited Drona to welcome him to Hastinapura, treating him with the highest respect. Drona, overwhelmed by the gesture, felt deeply honored to receive such regard from Bhishma, the greatest warrior of the era. Upon reaching the royal palace, Drona was greeted with a grand ceremonial welcome. Maidens showered him with flowers, and Bhishma presented him with royal attire and fine jewelry. The royal gurus recited poems praising Drona's illustrious journey, from being a disciple of Lord Parashurama to establishing a renowned ashram and training countless disciples without the patronage of any king. Drona's heart swelled with pride and satisfaction, affirming that his life's path had led him to this destined moment. Bhishma then formally requested Drona to accept the role of royal guru of Hastinapura alongside Kripacharya. Drona, feeling deeply respected and valued, received the honor. Shakuni, caught off guard by the swift events, found no opportunity to manipulate Dhritarashtra into opposing Drona's appointment. In a private conversation with Bhishma, Drona expressed a heartfelt desire that he hoped Bhishma would help him fulfill. Bhishma said that he and his kingdom were honored to host a great guru like Drona, and assured him that he would do whatever was needed to support him. Drona then shared his story with Bhishma, recounting his childhood friendship with King Draupada of Panchala. They had grown up together in Drona's father Bharadwaja's ashram, where Draupada had once promised lifelong help and support. However, when Drona later sought assistance from Draupada, the king humiliated him, treating him like a beggar in his royal court and insulting him in front of his family. The incident had left a deep scar on Drona's heart. Drona revealed his plan to train his son Ashwathama and, with a strong army, lead a campaign against Draupada to humble the arrogant king. He requested Bhishma's support, specifically asking that the Kuru princes, once trained, be allowed to join the campaign against Panchala. Bhishma listened carefully but hesitated, reminding Drona that Panchala had been a long-standing ally of Hastinapura. Despite his reservations, he agreed to Drona's request, but with one critical condition. Bhishma explained that the knowledge of divyastras had been carefully safeguarded for generations by the Kuru kingdom. Only the most mature and responsible individuals were entrusted with such knowledge. He expressed concern that political schemes were trying to spread this dangerous power indiscriminately, which could lead to catastrophic consequences. Drona understood Bhishma's concerns and assured him that as the royal guru of Hastinapura, he would ensure the knowledge of divyastras was only taught to the Kuru princes and his son, Ashwathama. Reassured by Drona's promise, Bhishma felt relieved and agreed to support Drona's plan to send the princes against Drupada after completing their training. This conversation marked a pivotal moment, strengthening the bond between Drona and Hastinapura and setting the stage for significant events in the future.
The great powers of the realm stand poised upon a delicate and uncertain balance. Bhishma, ever vigilant in his duty, remains steadfast in his resolve to protect the Kuru kingdom. He is determined that the sacred knowledge of Divyastras must never fall into unworthy hands. Only the royal lineage of Hastinapura, he believes, should wield such formidable power, ensuring that their kingdom stands resplendent and unmatched among the realms of Bharat. To achieve this, he appointed Drona as the royal guru, convinced that Drona alone possessed the mastery and discipline required to teach these celestial weapons. Drona, bound by both gratitude and ambition, accepts this responsibility with solemn intent. He resolves to train the princes of Hastinapura with utmost rigor, while guarding the knowledge of Divyastras from all others, as Bhishma has commanded. Yet within his heart lingers another purpose, the long-awaited retribution against Drupada. Through the very princes he trains, Drona seeks the means to humble his former friend turned rival. The Pandavas, born with the blood of celestial deities coursing through their veins, stand disciplined and resolute. Loyal to their mother and devoted to their guru, they quietly prepare themselves, their latent and extraordinary abilities, waiting for the moment they must be revealed. Duryodhana, proud and unyielding, refused to bow to the authority of any man. His spirit burned with ambition, and he sought dominion that answered to none but himself, with the unwavering support of his 99 loyal brothers standing firmly beside him. Dhritarashtra, though a follower of Dharma, holds a deeper affection for his own sons than for the sons of his brother. Unknowingly, he had already fallen under the subtle influence and manipulation of Shakuni and Kanika. Vidura, ever wise and loyal, stands firmly devoted to the kingdom and to Bhishma. Through his network of secret agents, he quietly gathers crucial information and ensures that Bhishma remains aware of the hidden movements across the realm. Krupacharya, another revered guru of Hastinapura, stands alongside Bhishma and Drona, faithfully guiding the princes and supporting the order of the kingdom. Karna, bearing within him the radiant energy of the sun itself, refuses to live beneath the burden of curses and societal scorn. He rejects the notion that only kings are destined to rule, while others must forever submit. His spirit yearns to challenge the very order that binds the world. And Shakuni, whose cunning mind can manipulate even the most powerful rulers, devises a very different scheme. With the assistance of Kanika, he spreads the news of Hastinapura's grand competition throughout the lands of Bharata. His intent is to gather warriors from every corner of the world, creating immense rivalry that will challenge the Kuru princes and reduce Hastinapura's unmatched stature. turning it into merely another kingdom among many, and allowing confusion and unrest to grow. The realm stands upon the precipice of turmoil. Powers gather, ambitions sharpen, loyalties are tested, alliances tighten, and hidden schemes begin to unfold. The winds of destiny grow heavier, and the days ahead promise shadows far darker than those that have passed. The world edges slowly toward chaos, and the future waits to reveal what fate has yet to unfold.